Maverick News, the antivirus program for your mind. And now, the Freedom Reporters.
Good evening, everyone, and thanks for joining us here on Freedom Reporters on the Maverick News Network. And I'm Rick Walker with my charming co-host, Mr.
Brendan Kennedy, co-host for Maverick News. Good evening, Rick, and everybody out there. How is everybody doing today?
Well, I'm doing okay, and I hope everybody out there in internet land is doing well as well, in spite of the state of the world and the State of the Union, because it is the State of the Union address tonight at 9 p.m. And I have a separate broadcast, special broadcast set up for 9 p.m. tonight. So I'll stick around for a little while for that after we sign off from this broadcast. And that'll be interesting, especially with Joe Biden's approval rating at a record low. And we have a lot of stuff to talk about here, though. First, special guest coming in tonight, Ed Dickson. He works with Orphans in Ukraine and has spent a lot of time in Ukraine, and he will share some insight into what is going on over there, and we'll also have some information on how you can make a difference if you want to, how you can help out, how you can help those orphans that he works with. And obviously, it's a pretty urgent matter over there right now. Plus, tonight, what we're going to start off with is the witch hunt for truckers, the trucker witch hunt, which continues with police. And some of that stuff, I think, is very concerning.
Yeah, so there's been a lot of interesting things happening with that. Well, I guess it's more concerning than interesting that they have taken this list from Give, Send, Go of all the donors that have donated to the trucker movement, and they are basically looking for everybody who is either a government employee, a police officer, whether they work for like a news organization or a media organization, and they are hunting them down. And the press has been cheerleading this and pushing this forward.
Yes, they have. And here's Yahoo News, which is honestly very left-wing. And as you can see, well, it's actually a CBC article coming up through Yahoo News, both left-wing organizations. Headline: Ontario Provincial Police investigating officers who appear to have donated to Freedom Convoy. And this I find disturbing. I find it to be completely inappropriate, honestly. And I will tell you why. Do you want to hear why, Brendan?
Bring it out there. Lay it on the line.
It's inappropriate because these officers have every right to donate to anything they want to donate to when it's done in a private manner. The policy for police services, and it's not just Ontario Provincial Police, I believe it's the Windsor Police Service, Toronto Police Service, other police services as well across Canada.
I could definitely confirm Toronto and Windsor. I've seen those articles. So, yeah, you're right on the money that they're looking for any police officers, or, like I said, if it involves a government or media paycheck, they're looking for you.
Right. So when these officers donated, there was nothing illegal about donating to it at the time. And it was done in a way that was supposed to be confidential. So now, after the fact, they're retroactively expressing concern, and they're justifying, I guess, an investigation into this, because the government, Justin Trudeau and Chrystia Freeland, have decided to retroactively make it I don't know if it's illegal, but
They're trying to make it that way, and they're going to demonize you either way. It doesn't matter.
right. And how can that possibly be fair to anyone, police officer or otherwise, especially when the information was obtained illegally? The list of donors was hacked from Give, Send, Go. And it was obtained illegally. So now what we have is a hunt, an investigation into donors by police who are using information that was hacked and obtained illegally. You've got the cops using information obtained illegally to go after police officers who donated in a way that was supposed to be anonymous.
And here's the thing.
Go ahead, Brendan.
I don't think this is a large amount of trucker or a large amount of police officers that have donated to this. I know that there's definitely a lot of police who don't want to enforce the COVID narrative, and they don't want to do some of the terrible things that they've been forced to. So I could see some of them going in with this. I would say, though, that there's not a huge amount of them that have donated into this. So I think that's not going to look good for these police officers who have ultimately donated to this cause.
So OPP spokesperson Bill Dickson says that the matter has been brought to the attention of OPP Command and the OPP Professional Standards Unit, and they're conducting an investigation. Well, how can that possibly be appropriate or fair? I'm not even sure this will go anywhere. But you see, what this is it's political, and it is designed for use by the media to smear the truckers and scare anyone who donated and intimidate people so that they'll think twice about ever donating to anything that might have the word freedom attached to it or anything conservative, because it's only left-wing, far left-wing causes that are okay to donate to. And this is such a load of crap. It just makes me sick to my stomach. The public is tired of this double standard. They are tired of it. Anyone would have a brain is tired of this crap. I'm tired of it. This is nauseating. You got to remember that during the height of the pandemic, when it was illegal for outdoor gatherings, the authorities said it was okay for the Black Lives Matter movement to hold huge demonstrations. Not only that, we saw police officers in jurisdiction after jurisdiction after jurisdiction after jurisdiction take a knee with those protesters and raise their fist in a communist salute in solidarity with that Marxist organization, BLM. Now, I've got issues with BLM because of their Marxist ties, their ties to communism. That's why I have an issue with them. I don't like their political ideology.
Also, there's a huge problem with the amount of things that they've, like the certain things that they've invested, all that donation money they have gotten into. So, I mean, they've donated into a whole bunch of mansions and stuff like that. They bought like a mansion in downtown Toronto, and another one elsewhere in Toronto. Not to mention the CEO, who is no longer the quote-unquote CEO anymore, has squandered all kinds of money on millions of dollars of homes. And it was just less than a year ago, she was on major news networks saying, we are a communist trained organization. We believe in communism and blah, 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 blah. It's like, well, here's the real stripes of that organization is they've guilted and battered people into believing that they are all racist and ergo must donate money to their cause. And meanwhile, here's the real picture. There is issues in policing across the board, and I agree with that. But I don't think how Black Lives Matter operated was appropriate by any means. And I think that they jumped in front of the parade and labeled what the parade was. So they made these people who had died of very unfortunate circumstances, and they turned them into martyrs for their own cause. And all they ended up doing was stuffing their own coffers.
Yeah, I mean, I don't like the way BLM uses their money either. I have issues with it, so I would never donate to BLM. I don't like the politics behind it, and I don't like the way they handle their money. I just don't like it. So I would never do it. The big issue I have here is that it's just this ongoing double standard where Dickson says here, and he says that the OPP holds its members accountable for their actions while on duty and off. He goes on to say they have a responsibility to demonstrate neutrality and remain nonpartisan. He says any demonstration or expression of views and opinions that may be interpreted as condoning illegal activity is in direct opposition to the OPP's values and mandate. Well, it wasn't illegal until when they donated. And I would argue that even after Justin Trudeau and Chrystia Freeland have gone out of their way to try to make it illegal, these cops haven't done anything illegal. They donated to something that a cause that they believed in, which is freedom. And it was really nobody's business but their own. They did nothing wrong. They did nothing illegal.
That's the ticket right there, Rick. That's the ticket right there, that when they donated, it was anonymous. And so, ergo, it has nothing to do with remaining neutral, because is that to say that they now have to announce who they vote for? Is that what they're going to be too? That they have, like, or are you going to say that because you're a police officer, you're not allowed to vote anymore? So,
and where do the cops, these senior these senior police officers, where do they get off using illegally obtained confidential financial information to go after people in this manner? It's wrong.
Do you think if it went to court, it would be thrown out for that very reason?
I'm not a lawyer, but ethically, I think this stinks. Legally, you got to talk to a lawyer. I don't know, but it sure doesn't seem right to me.
And I think now would be a good time to bring up the story I put in the share screen there.
Sure.
In connection with what we're talking about. And so FinTrack deputy director says trucker convoy funding came from widespread public support, not terrorism funding.
Right.
And so, in a testimony before the House of Commons Finance Committee, the deputy director of Financial Transactions and Report Analysis Center, FinTrack, the National Financial Intelligence Agency of Canada, said the Freedom Convoy funding did not come from terrorism funding or money laundering, despite the Liberal government treating the convoy's funding using anti-terrorism tools. And so that is kind of what the spiel is here.
Right. He says it was their own money. It wasn't cash that funded terrorism or was in any way money laundering. These police officers did nothing wrong. This is a PR thing. It's a spin thing. It's a political thing. And if these police officers are reprimanded in any way, I think it's completely inappropriate. They've just done nothing wrong. That's my view, and I'm sticking to it.
And right behind you.
Yeah,
96.
and we are pleased and honored to have our special guest tonight, Ed Dickson, join us. How are you tonight, Ed?
Very good.
Excellent. Now, Ed is a person who has been working with orphans in Ukraine, and yeah, I mean, I'm glad you could join us tonight because the situation over there is very scary. So I'm just going to throw it over to you, Ed, and tell us what's the situation over there right now.
Yeah, I think everybody's kind of, getting really aware now of what's really happening there, and just the disaster, of epic proportions that's taking place and probably going to take place even more soon. And I just, I've been living in Ukraine for 25 years. And I was over there working as an agricultural consultant from Canada 25 years ago, doing some agricultural stuff, and happened to walk into an orphanage where there were kids, just horrible situation. And I really, I thought, well, surely we can do something to help these kids. And I never imagined that was going to turn into a whole life change. But it's been the greatest thing. You can just imagine, watching these kids grow up and really doing amazing things with their lives when nobody there thought they would ever do anything. Anyway, fast forward to what's happened the last while, and just watching, Ukrainians. They're really tough people. And I've told people that for a long time. I said, you don't imagine how strong these people are. And they put us to shame, and I'm genuinely. And they can get through any crisis. It's nothing for them. And so watching them now and seeing what's happening, it's heartbreaking for me being here in Canada. I happened to come back for a year. And a lot of people have said, wow, you're fortunate to be back right now. And I'm like, man, my heart is not here. I'm hurting. My wife, her mom and dad are in Kiev. Her sister's in Kiev. Their 4 daughters are, they're hiding in the subway stations. And so we're kind of thinking our house is right in the middle of the fighting right now, wondering what we'll be going back to, on and on. We got 40 full-time workers over there that I'm just amazed. Like, I mean, I'm calling these people, I'm thinking they're going to be running for the borders, and they're like, no, Ed, we want to help people. We're staying right where we are, which you can imagine, guys. I'm a grown man. I'm practically in tears watching them and their bravery and what's happening right now. It's
because just, regardless of the politics and what someone's position might be on this, nobody wants to see these kids suffer any more than they already are, right?
Yeah. We're moving
the
kids
citizens
right now by train. Sorry. Yeah, we're moving kids right now by train, trying to move kids by train to Poland, just to get them out of the area.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit more about this orphanage. What's the story behind that?
So, yeah, we're actually, the first one I went to, it was kind of crazy because the people there, they had a nickname for it. They kind of called it the place that God forgot. And because all the kids, many of them were without arms, without legs, just severe disabilities. So to them, I mean, they were abandoned. All of them were abandoned by their parents because of their disabilities. So they were kind of considered useless. And just it was devastating. It wasn't so much the hard situation. It was the lack of love, that you could almost smell and taste there. And so we started working with the kids. I'll just give you one example. We got one girl, no arms, no legs, and she just started to watch while some of the other kids were learning to paint, and she says, "Give me a brush," and the guys were like, "What?" And she said, "Put it in my mouth." So she grabbed the brush with her teeth. And guys, if I showed you some of her artwork right now, it would blow you away. Like, she's just, her artwork has been all over the world. She's been honored on national television in Ukraine as one of the heroes of Ukraine for overcoming her, everything. And I could go on and on and on with kids. We're in 20 orphanages over there now, and yeah, I could talk about these kids, but now, I mean, I'm just fearing for their lives, honestly.
How many kids are there?
We work with about 3,000 children altogether that we're helping, and yeah, and so altogether, just in Ukraine, there's about 100,000 orphan kids in institutions. In Russia would be probably more. Like I've worked in Siberia and Moscow, and similar type situation where the Soviet Union basically, kind of told parents if they had a disabled child, it's better to give it to the state because that's going to help them to be productive citizens, right? Because if they have to take care of this kid, they're not going to be productive, more or less.
So you have a broad experience and knowledge of both sides of the coin on this between Ukraine and Russia, is what you're saying?
Yeah, absolutely. I have a lot of friends in Russia. We're close. I travel back and forth quite a bit. I'm in Kyrgyzstan, Uzbekistan, Kazakhstan, all those different areas. I've worked with government leaders on both sides, and in Ukraine as well. The former president's wife, Poroshenko's wife, we worked on trying to improve special education in the country, in Ukraine. Because basically we have 98% of kids in Canada who go to special education of some sort, like kids with special needs. In Ukraine, it was 2%. And so we were trying to, do what we could to kind of change that.
So this is a really complicated issue in some regards, where nobody likes what Putin is doing in this situation. But can you paint a picture, like how pro-Russia is Ukraine actually, in your opinion?
It's interesting because before the revolution 8 years ago, I would say Ukraine itself was about 50-50, like pro-Russian, pro-Ukrainian. And certainly on the eastern side, like the percentage was much larger. On the western side, the percentage would be lower, right? I mean, they're right close to Poland there and everything. But after the revolution, when Russia took Crimea, and then when they began to support the protesters in eastern.
For folks at home who want to know, it's the 2014 Maidan revolution, which took place.
So then, like, people's opinions just began to shift very rapidly then, to the point where probably, I would say now, it's probably closer to 80-20 kind of thing. And certainly, again, the western side of the country would be 95% pro-European and maybe 5% pro-Russian. The other parts might be a little higher, but it's still really shifted from what, and like I say, I've been there the whole 25 years, and I travel all around the country regularly. And so I got a pretty good pulse of the people, and I speak fluent Russian and my Ukrainians. I chose to speak Russian because that way I could speak in Russia, the stands, Ukraine, a lot of countries, people speak Russians.
Big time. We have an interesting question here that just came up. I think it's worthy of picking your brain at. What are the conditions of the orphanages that you have worked with? And are you able to maybe also tell us at the same time, what was the condition of those orphanages before you started working with them over 20 years ago?
Yeah, when we started there, it was really bad. Like, I mean, kids were not like dying, right? But they were slowly dying just because of poor attention. I think I can't blame the workers even, because they just didn't understand that, these kids needed to be taken outside. They needed to be, cared for like real human beings, and not just sort of like material. And so gradually that began to change, and the conditions, as you can imagine, in the orphanages is much better now. Like it's changed quite a bit. However, the bottom line is, as you guys know, every kid needs to be in a family. Like growing up in an institution just is not the place for any of us to spend our whole lives, as much as they try to make the best of it. And that's, you know, you can even improve the conditions and the food and the medicine. We're doing like life-changing surgeries for a lot of these kids and everything. But the greatest thing that can happen to any one of these kids is when they get adopted. That's the miracle of family that takes place.
Is there a website or anything online where people could go to see what these places look like or get more information?
Yeah, there's a lot. Like you can just Google orphanages in Ukraine. You'll find all kinds of stuff on there. And it'll show, you know, up to date condition. But we have a website. Our website is called loadsoflove.org. Just kind of outlines some of the programs that we do. We do real crazy stuff. We take kids to McDonald's at Christmas time because you'll find this kind of hard to believe, but in Ukraine and Russia and those places, McDonald's is sort of the elite place to eat. You know, like people get all dressed up to go to McDonald's, but it just because it compared to their salaries, it's pretty expensive. And so, you know, we're doing all kinds of stuff like that just to try to give these kids more of a normal life. And it's even hard for me to talk about this right now a little bit because I'm thinking back on all my memories and everything with our team and like the kids and doing the happy, we call it McJoyful Christmas at Christmas time with the kids. And yeah, we have about 40 full-time workers over there, real heroes. And it's devastating right now. I can't even watch the news or anything. It's just.
No, my heart goes out to you. I don't think that in this situation there isn't any necessarily. Let me rephrase it. I don't necessarily think that there's any good guys in this situation, but I really don't think what Putin is doing is good either. I think he's kind of behaving like a bully, and I also think it's at the detriment of terrible foreign policy that has been enacted for so long. We've had the USSR collapse in '91. We had total opportunity to bridge the gap with an old enemy, but instead we've kind of ostracized it, and we ignore him a lot until Putin gets mad, and then he does something like this. And they go, oh well, look at this big tyrant, this monster over here. So it's like they, to an effect, have created this monster, and now they're shocked that it's behaving like a monster. Is that accurate, would you say?
Yeah, I think it's somewhat accurate. I think, you know, you always got to look on both sides a little bit. I mean, I know the Ukrainians. I know they're good people. I know they're strong people. I know they're fighting for freedom. You know, like we all want to fight for freedom. We don't want to be controlled by someone.
No.
On the other hand, you know, in when you look at Putin, you got to realize that just imagine the United States. Let's say it was during the Soviet Union, and let's say Mexico told the United States, we're going to join the Soviet Union. I think the United States would say, well, not so sure that's going to happen. You know, like we're not going to allow the Soviet Union to put missiles like all along the Mexican border. And yet it, you know, again, looking at both sides, it becomes pretty complex, but also, you know, you can understand some things.
So when you're watching the news, Ed, are we getting? It doesn't seem to me like it's likely to be very accurate, because whenever it comes to coverage of war, any war, I feel like I'm watching sports coverage when I tune into television.
Yeah, I think all, you know, there's so much stuff coming out now, and I just get tired when I'm watching it because, you know, people stretching the truth this way or that, and it's really a lot simpler. It's just politics. people fighting for territory. It's you look at their side, you look at our side, and it kind of makes sense, and all this other stuff coming out. I don't know. It just they're trying to paint a picture of that maybe will just create this kind of very mysterious view that will get people watching the news every day, Mm-hmm. And really what we need to be doing is really thinking hard about saving people's lives right now.
So tell me more about Loads of Love and how the organization helps, because I know they're based in Chatham, Kent, Ontario, which is in Canada.
Yeah, we're based in Chatham. We've been operating here for 25 years, basically called Loads of Love because we started shipping containers overseas. And that was it. Like we were sending loads of love to other countries. Somebody came up with that name and kind of stuck. And we have a secondhand store now, a big one in Chatham, where basically the secondhand store makes enough money on a monthly basis to cover all our administration costs. So when people donate money for Ukraine, for example, to help the kids over there, 100% of the money goes to Ukraine. And very few organizations are able to do that, but that's the kind of the store helping us to do that. Also helps us to send the containers and stuff like that. And we last year, just through the pandemic, we handed out over 10,000 families got groceries from people here in Canada, gave money just because they were really struggling over there. Because when the government there shut down, like people just lose their jobs. There's no unemployment. There's no safety payments or anything. So people were just running out of food, and we started delivering food to people. Now I look at it and I'm thinking like, man, am I ever happy we did that? Because now we got all these processes in place to, that's what we're doing right now. We're getting out food to people. We're getting out medicine to people. Churches, different places are setting up bomb shelters and mattresses and so in a way, kind of thankful that we had all that in place to do that.
And so if people do want to donate, they can do that at loadsoflove.org.
Yeah. There's a donate button right there. And just, I can say that, like, thank God the banks are still working. It's an absolute miracle to me. Like, just the fact that they're still open, that people are still able to use their cards. I was literally on my knees praying, like God, just keep the internet open somehow so that we don't lose touch with these people. And wouldn't you know it, Elon Musk comes out with keeping the internet open. And I was like, oh man, God can even use Elon Musk. Can you imagine? And so it's just, and really just the fact that we're able to communicate. Like my workers are in bomb shelters.
I want to touch on that a little bit, actually, because I think that's really weird. If I was Russia and I wanted Ukraine,
the
number one thing I'm going to do is going to cut off communication, and they have the capability to do that. There is something called an EMG or electromagnetic pulse bomb, basically, that could knock out all these electronics and all this other stuff.
Yeah,
that hasn't happened yet. I think that is the weirdest thing.
It is weird, actually. And really, that's what I say. I've just been like, my goodness, like how am I still able to communicate? I mean, people are in bomb shelters, and I'm talking to them on my phone and looking in their faces. Like it's really amazing to me. Of course, I think it's just God doing it for me, but I'm sure there's more to it than that.
No, it is a point worth bringing up, I think, though, that...
Well, I think it's because what the mainstream media is feeding us is not accurate. And what Putin is really trying to do is he wants to keep the country intact. He wants to go in there, and he doesn't want to destroy everything, and he doesn't want to alienate all the people. He's told his military not to go in there and to try to not kill civilians, because he wants to install a new government there. That's what his objective is, to keep the West out and NATO out.
Yeah, I think he was really surprised at the response of the Ukrainian people. I think, and that's kind of weird to me too, because I think, like, I mean, I knew, most people in Ukraine knew that, the tide had turned, and there was not the support for Russia at all that they thought. Man, I think they were thinking they were going to be able to come in and, just come in very calmly and he even encouraged the Ukrainian army to turn, against their own government, and really judged that like wrong too. And I think there's, it's kind of like, I don't know, it's like two brothers that just don't understand each other at all. And, I just, bottom line though, it's not going to gain. I don't think anybody's going to gain anything from this at all.
That's a good perspective, and it's very chilling and also concerning, because
Yeah.
once Putin realizes that if he's not going to get anything out of this, then that could lead him to behaving like more of a monster.
Yeah.
Like, it's not funny, but I mean...
I heard somebody say, somebody said the other day, they said, when you look into the mind of a demon, don't look for logic.
No, that's right.
No,
that's
it doesn't
right.
make sense. None of this makes sense. When I left Ukraine 2 weeks ago, and I was walking around, I was going to cafe, everybody's just normal. Nobody thought this would happen. Nobody had, like, even though the U.S. and everybody else was saying, oh, they're going to invade, every Ukrainian was like, they will not, like, there's no way. And so anyway, it was just a shock, and that's why everybody's still in shock now. Sorry, guys, I just realized that my light's off.
Oh, there we go. Perfect.
Now we can see. I was wondering what was going on.
Sorry, the sun was going down as I was on, and I didn't want to get up to shut it off. I thought everybody would tune out.
Well, Ed, Ruth brings up something here, Ruth Baggard, and I share her concern. What's going on over there right now is governments, including Canada, are sending over weapons. Yeah. These are people who here, and the people supporting this are people, Canadians who are like, oh, we have to have gun control. We can't have anybody having guns. And now they're sending over weapons, heavy weapons in some cases, military grade weapons, and they're handing them out to civilians, people who don't have proper training, people who don't know what they're doing. I know from another contact I have over there that some of these weapons, a lot of them are falling into the hands of criminals and organized crime. We have gangs now running around on the streets over in the capital, shooting each other, causing mayhem. And this is where some of our weapons will end up as the Canadian government sends them over. Mm-hmm. I don't see the sense in some of these policies, and honestly, I have to be quite frank. I think this is a lost cause, and I disagree with these media assertions that suggest Russia has been pushed back and they're on their heels somehow. I don't think we've seen even the remote beginning of what Russia is going to do or what they're capable of. And I think Putin has been very strategic and surgical about what he's been doing because he's trying to minimize the collateral damage. I'm very concerned about these civilians being given weapons to then run into battle, because what that's doing is it's putting civilians in harm's way. That the Russians will not be able to distinguish between a soldier and a regular citizen, and a lot of innocent people are going to get killed as a result of this strategy. I don't agree with it at all. And I think just dumping a bunch of guns in there it's just more bad policy following bad policy. It's terrible foreign policy that has led to all of this to begin with. And now it's like, well, because they emboldened that government thinking that the West was going to back them up if Russia did anything. And now push has come to shove. And where is the West? we're not there. We're not going in because we know if we do, it will escalate. So what are we doing instead? We're saying, here's a bunch of hand grenades and machine guns. You guys go fight. We'll sit back over here and eat Twinkies and watch Netflix. I don't agree. I don't like that.
I think you're absolutely right on a lot of things. I think I was talking to Army and Navy guys today, former executives who are retired now, and they were telling me that the world has no idea what's going to happen in the next little while. That was their, me, of course, I'm praying and hoping there's going to be a miracle, some kind of, but the only thing I would kind of hesitate on is that it was a strategy. I think strategy probably is better a word used for certain things, but a lot of this is just certainly on the Ukrainian side, just knee-jerk reaction. Like I'm telling you, with all my heart, people in Ukraine did not believe this was going to happen. The leadership in Ukraine. I have friends in the president's administration in Ukraine. They did not believe this was going to happen. They really genuinely, they couldn't see like what would Russia gain by an all-out invasion of Ukraine. And when it happened, they just were in shock. Like they're just like, and I think, here's the thing, Zelensky, he's not a politician.
Yeah.
He's not. He's never been a politician. I knew him before he was even in the president's office. He's a comedian. He went out and did shows and had a show, did a nice television program. Suddenly he's president because the last president was doing such a terrible job, but there wasn't really a good candidate to replace him. And he had this show and everybody voted for him. And all of a sudden there he is. I know there's other people, around there that are more, strategy and things like that. But when, I heard one guy saying that, that the leadership just wants to kill all the Ukrainians. If they wanted to kill all the Ukrainians, they could have probably picked a better, a different way of doing that. And remember, Ukraine is not in Russia right now. Ukraine is not attacking Russia. And I don't mean that to say that it's all Russia's fault, but I just mean that to say that, what's really going on. And I'm thinking about that US-Mexico example. There's a real, genuine fear on their part. Because if Ukraine were given the option to join NATO, well, then they'd have to go to war with NATO. Because there's military bases, there's naval bases, there's all kinds of stuff in Ukraine that they're not going to give up. And they're not going to give up Crimea. And that would mean all-out war with NATO. And they figure probably that this is better than all-out war with NATO. Because all-out war with NATO means that we're all gone, right? Not just Ukraine. So
well, I think, I'm worried that it might escalate to that anyway, because it seems to me we've just got a whole bunch of bad people doing a lot of really bad things and making bad decisions.
I used to work in government in Canada. I was in the agriculture department, and I'm telling you, our whole reason for living in the government, everybody in the government, just to be seen to be doing things, just to be giving the public the impression that we're really doing something. Giving the public the impression that the minister and the prime minister, that they're really doing something. That was the whole existence of government, to make people, almost like a doctor, when you walk in, he wants to make you feel like he knows what to do. Don't worry, the doctor knows what to do. And you want him to give you that impression. And it's the same thing that the governments do to us, And so they come up with all these big plans about how to handle everything. They don't know what they're doing. They don't know the truth of all these things and how it's going to affect us. And everybody knows that. That's common knowledge around the world, that we don't know the real effects of all these things that we've been fighting for the last couple of years, and what what a mask does, what a shot does, what all these, But the government tries to give the impression. I'm sorry, I'm rambling on, guys. But
go ahead.
Government tries to give the impression and 65% of people in the country are drinking the Kool-Aid.
Big time. Big time. I think you hit the nail on the head there. And this reminds me of a little bit of a rabbit hole I went on after last night's show. Is I suddenly became more concerned, and you don't have to answer this because of its political whatever, but anybody could give their thoughts on this. But I am more concerned that Justin Trudeau and Joe Biden are at the helm of this ship, driving it, than I am about Vladimir Putin. Like, is that saying something or what?
I think when you start to really look at it, we like to blame Vladimir Putin right now, and God knows, and I know that I'm really upset at what's going on, and I have opinions, and I have words that I want to say that I can't say. First of all, because I'm on this show, and secondly, because I'm a missionary. But
that's right.
But really, it's a little bit more of a societal thing. For some reason, 65% of people in many countries are drinking certain Kool-Aid, as I said, and following things that affect the whole rest of the country. And when a smaller percentage stands up and wants to change something, it's not really easy for them. And I think as society, you begin to realize that this is more, I don't know, it's more of a fight of dark and light than it is a fight of, against a certain person, right?
Yeah. So the screen here, we have, multiple screenshots around Kyiv and
Kiev.
Yeah, Kyiv.
Actually,
it depends on how you pronounce it, right?
Actually, it's in Ukrainian, it's Kyiv, and in Russian, if the translation from Russian is Kiev. Yeah.
Yeah, and from what we're seeing on these cameras here, I don't see explosions happening or airstrikes or anything like that. What's your interpretation of what you're seeing on this multi-screen screen?
Yeah, it looks pretty quiet right now, doesn't it?
Yeah, every night it seems to have been pretty quiet so far when we've been monitoring.
Yeah,
just occasional skirmishes.
Yeah, some of the stuff they're showing now, mind you, there's been a few things that I saw, like I said, I saw on television, and I'm like, I know that building. Like I drive by that building every day in Kyiv, so it was really hard on me. It'd be kind of like, you guys watching your hometown and seeing certain buildings and certain roads, and you're on that road, and but I also know that I'll say this, I was in Cairo when one of the revolutions was going on there, and I didn't even know it was going on. I was in a part of the city where it was quiet, and my parents called me, and they're like, "Hey, are you okay? Are you?" And I'm like, "What?" I had no idea. And yet the media was making it look like there was, the entire country of Egypt was on fire, right? So, yeah, that's media selling newspapers, I guess.
Big time.
Yeah.
Big time.
Yeah.
So have you been in contact with people over there?
Yeah,
you must be talking every day, right?
Every minute of every day. I just have a friend who's in Zaporozhye, which is south of Dnipropetrovsk, now called Dnipro. These are cities of 1.5 million. And Zaporozhye, she was telling me that she said, they wanted to get out by train with some of the kids, but they couldn't because the train track was damaged from missile strike or something, and they could only get out by car. But the roads are all shut off. They got these block posts up, and so they can't get out by car. And then she said, we're seeing tanks like around, but she didn't say tanks were shooting or anything. They're just around. And
are we talking about Russian tanks or?
Yeah, Russian tanks. So, and again, like, there you go, right? I mean, there's tanks around, but she didn't see that they were firing at anybody or anything. And even talking to a lot of guys I know, they said it seemed that the Russian soldiers came in And they were like, well, I thought we were on a training exercise. I thought we were, or I thought we were just, they told us we were just going to go in, take over the central part of Ukraine. The government was going to leave and everything was going to be calmly transferred over. And so it certainly seems like that there's a little bit of confusion, maybe. I don't know. It seems
the Daily Wire did report that, Ed, and so I'm not sure though, because here's the thing: they only have to give name, rank, and serial number.
Yeah.
They're going to tell them whatever hocus pocus baloney that they want to. So I mean,
absolutely.
How credible is that? I would be unsure how credible that is.
Yeah.
It's weird. It is so weird. That's like in.
But think about this: the tanks are there, but
Yes.
they don't. Like she said, the tanks are all around, but they're not shooting. It's not like they're just going in and wiping everything out either, right? So
that's what I mean. A lot of this stuff doesn't really add up if you're looking at it as a conventional war, right?
Absolutely.
No, it doesn't.
Which just reinforces my thoughts that it's because he's trying to be surgical. He doesn't want a lot of civilian casualties, if any, and he's trying to minimize all of that.
Seems that way, yeah.
Yeah, that seems to be the approach. So hopefully we don't have a lot of civilian casualties or any casualties, but it seems to be escalating.
Yeah, it seems right now from the numbers even that the Ukrainian government is putting out that not a lot of civilians have been killed, right? Which is, I mean, I'm of course, like, I'm just thanking God every day, like just keep my family and my friends and our workers safe, like, but the number of people that are crossing the border right now, like we're talking millions, like millions. Ukraine's population has gone down since I got there. I think when Soviet Union fell, it was 50 million, went down to 45. Now it was down to 40. It's probably going to go down to 35 or 30 now. Basically just really, drastically declining population.
So tell me about the procedure that you're using or methods or whatever. What goes into getting these orphans out of the country? You say you're trying to send them to Poland.
Yeah, just a friend of mine he's a former advisor to the president for children's rights in the country. And he's right now in the train station in Kiev. He's got like close to 200 kids more or less sitting on the floor. They're waiting for the train. He said the train was 2 hours late. We're just providing funding for gasoline, for buses, for trains, to move these kids. Of course, we don't have, it's not like we have to pay the whole shot, but whenever you do something, even if the government says they'll fund it, there's always people along the way that have to be paid for this and that. So we're helping with that. We're not coordinating anything ourselves, but just letting all our partners know that we're ready. We're sending food, like I said, money for food and medicine and, the various places around the country right now. And thank God people can still use their cards. I don't think that's going to last very long because the stores are running out of food, and then you're only going to be able to get stuff with cash pretty soon. And so we're just doing our best and wondering always what tomorrow's going to bring or how it's going to change. I hope, really just hope that they'll be able to sit down and work something out. But I think, the talks that they had, obviously they sat down and they weren't even close to each other. Yeah.
So this people you've been speaking to over there, have any of them been offered weapons, or are they fighting, or trying to hide?
No, we have one Canadian right now. She's a lady from Alliston, Ontario, who's living in my apartment, and she's still going out. She works at a rehab center that we support for, alcoholism is super bad over there. Just helping guys to get out of alcoholism and stuff. She works there. So she's been going there regularly. She's going out every day. We haven't had, well, I've had some guys contact me and say, Ed, can you get us weapons? Can you get us, they said, even more than weapons, what we need is, we don't have fire retardant uniforms. We don't have bulletproof vests. We don't have helmets. We don't have any goggles that we need. And I'm thinking, like, you're asking me to like, and so they haven't, all my friends and even the guys that are in the army that I know haven't asked for any weapons. They're just asking for simple, like, uniforms, bulletproof vests. Like,
That's an interesting point you bring up. I do know I'm a little bit concerned about the Canadian government and the way they have portrayed, like, they are calling for volunteers there in Ukraine, and I kind of don't care about that a whole lot. Like, that's fine if they were to do that, but I've seen articles, like the BBC published an article about a comedian who lives out of Toronto who was a Canadian military reject. He wants to go over there and help fight. And the Canadian government is saying, well, we're not going to tell you to do that, but if you want to do that, that's fine. Go for it. Have fun. And I think about what had happened in the Middle East over the past few years. Like, if our government were to say, oh, yeah, like, you can't, we're not saying you should go fight with ISIS, but if you want to go fight for ISIS, like, by all means. Like, think about it in that context, right? And then think about the international problems that we're going to have if the Russians start capturing Canadian citizens who went out there on a whim and either get killed or captured and they have Canadian passports. Like, that's not going to be a good scenario, I don't think. I don't think Russia will take kindly to that. They could even say, well, this is a hostile act of war. That's dangerous.
Yeah, I can't imagine. Well, who knows? Maybe the numbers will be big of guys going over. But we're talking, the Russian army has probably like 200, close to 200,000 now, if you include the Belarusian guys. And then we're talking, they've got access to 5, 6, 700,000 more if they need them. And like my friends, the army guy and the Navy guy were saying, like, people have no idea what could happen very soon if they don't just end this quickly, right?
That's the thing, right? So some of these individuals who go over there, they could actually be more of a hindrance on the military than a benefit, because you get
it's like a drop in the bucket, right?
I wanted to pick your brain on this. So this made the story yesterday. If you could bring up the picture I just put in the share box there. So here we have the Minister Chrystia Freeland, and they're reporting that this scarf here represents like a alt-right group. Are you able to comment on the validity of that statement?
The colors of that scarf, the words were used in the Maidan Revolution, but the color of the scarf comes from something that's called the Pravi sector. And the Pravi sector was basically a very right-wing group that was involved in the Maidan Revolution. They were, I wouldn't say, the most powerful group there. And some people have kind of exaggerated their influence in Ukraine, but they were influential. Absolutely. They were very powerful, and they were some of the biggest organizers, coordinators of the resistance from the Donetsk and Lugansk area. And so are they right wing? Absolutely. Do we
are they right wing as in conservative, or like right wing as in Nazis? Because there's a big difference there, right? But
I used the wrong word. I would say like ultra right. Yeah.
So fascistic Nazis, like real Nazis.
I I really, because I lived there, because I've been there 25 years, because I know a lot of the people in government and stuff like that. You know, I I really kind of it when I hear the word people referring to people there as Nazis, that it just a bit of an exaggeration, you know.
But
But
that's what Putin's been saying. He's into
yeah,
the
absolutely,
denazification is
yeah,
what he says, right?
yeah,
Well, and I mean, the Ottawa Citizen has reported far right groups that actually have swastika brandings on their what do you
yeah,
call it, on their
yeah,
militia stuff. So
yeah,
I don't know. I just was curious about this because I
yeah.
have misinformation goes two ways, right? So I mean,
Exactly,
um,
exactly. And I think, you know, it's really important to understand the psyche of the Ukrainian and Russian people. I mean, they won the Second World War. If you talk to any Russian or Ukrainian, they'll tell you they, and really genuinely, like with Hitler invading Russia, even Churchill was waiting there in the shores for the Russians to keep beating the Germans in Russia until it was, you know, enough for him that he could invade. And it didn't diminish what the Canadians, Americans, British did there, but really the Russians took the bulk of the hit there, and they feel, in their opinion, they won the Second World War. They were the ones that beat Hitler, and so anyone who says Nazis, like that, just irks the blood of any Ukrainian or Russian, and that's why you can understand being used to fuel emotions, you know, kind of on both sides.
I guess
so you're
the irony here is to see Chrystia Freeland with an ultra right banner in front of her, after, especially after. Well, you're getting the point, right?
are you able to translate that? Like, what does it say?
It
I have no.
says glory to Ukraine.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, yeah, it's a nationalistic, because you know, it's interesting too. Like, you know, when you travel around the world, we Canadians, we don't tend to be nationalistic. You know, like we're not really.
No, we
You
don't.
know, the Americans are a little more nationalistic than we are.
They try
We
to be.
tend to be, you know, because we're from nations all over the world, and we're, you know, we're just trying to have a good time, and but other countries, like, it's extremely important to them what nationality you are. When I got married, they asked me, "What nationality are you?" I said, "I'm Canadian," and they said, "Oh, that's not a nationality. That's a country where there's a lot of nationality." Oh, I said, "Oh, okay." Well, they said, "Where are your parents born?" I said, "In Canada." Where were your grandparents born? My grandparents were born in Ukraine, you know. And they said, "Oh, you're Ukrainian." I said, "Well, actually, they were Mennonites. Like, they were from a German colony down by Zaporozhye." Ah, so
Oh, so
you're
you're
German.
German.
Well, suddenly I was a German, you know, and but to people in that part of the world, nationality is extreme, like, and therefore, you know, the pride of Ukraine and the pride of Russia, like, it's just it's in them. They're much more ready to die for uh, that cause, you know, than sort of we understand, you know, in our sort of Canadian mentality.
So what about these kids that you care for, these orphans? They must, a lot of them must be very young. It must be difficult for them, and it must be a very emotional and scary
Oh,
thing.
you know, I think I was saying to someone the other day, I think we're going to be, if this ever gets, you know, under control, we're going to be dealing with a lot of trauma. You know, not that we're not dealing with trauma already with most of these kids, because you can imagine, you know, you were dumped off in an orphanage. You know, your parents are out there somewhere, but they didn't want you. You know, so that's enough of a trauma for them to constantly deal with. But now, dealing with this, and our workers were out today trying to get better, you know, mattresses, different supplies and different things for these bomb shelters, where the orphan kids are going. Every couple hours the sirens go off and they have to all run down into, whether it's a basement or a shelter, and these kids are yeah, I just, I can't imagine. And again, you know, just hoping that it's not going to get worse.
So how bad are the shortages of food and,
Yeah,
and other supplies?
everybody I'm talking to, they're sending me photos. One of the girls that works with us, she was walking through the grocery store just today with her phone on, showing me like they're empty. It's already empty, and there's no big supply lines coming in. There's no yeah.
So how long do you think this conflict can go on?
I think if something happens, some kind of decision, or to stop this in the next few days. But again, I'm not an expert on that. But the guys I was talking to, the Navy guys and the Army guys, they were saying like, Ed, you don't understand. We're talking years, and I'm like, what? What?
Years?
Years. That's what they said. I'm just talking about their opinion. And I just, I think what they were kind of referring to is some kind of, disaster like Syria, where you have a group of people, a smaller group of people who just won't give up. And it eventually turns the whole place into a disaster, right?
Wow.
I'm like everybody else. Well, first of all, I never believed it would happen, and now I'm like, just like stop this. Like somebody just stop this nightmare. Just think logically. Like we're talking about people's lives here, right?
Yeah.
And I have a home. Like I said, I have a home outside Kiev, and I couldn't care less right now. Like. I'm just much more concerned about the people's lives there. Yeah.
Now, loads of love. People often donate physical goods to loads of love.
Yeah.
Household items, things like that. But right now, what is needed most? Just cash?
Yeah. Right now, that's what we're doing. Like we're sending money like every day. Like we're getting money to channels through to people. We've got some stuff going on tomorrow that's going to be moving a large amount of cash into certain areas. We're just doing our very best to get that to the right place, so that, because of course there's money moving in the country, and some of it's going not into the right place, and so we're trying to get money into the hands of the right people who can help the kids, and so we're doing our best to do that right now. But the time on that, I don't know. I can't foresee the future right now. I'm just going day by day, one day at a time. And so eventually, like we're talking already to some groups in Poland about sending, aid. Can we help them get that aid through Poland, through some kind of green corridor or something to people, right? That's going to be the next step.
And the orphanage, where is it located? Is it in a relatively safe area, do you think, or is it like
right now? Like I said, we're moving kids out of Kiev, out of the orphanages in Kiev, but we don't generally work in Kiev, our organization, because Kiev is the rich part of Ukraine. Kiev is the wealthy part. That's where all the wealthy people live, and so the orphanages there are relatively well off. But we're working more in areas like Poltava, Kryvyi Rog, Dnipropetrovsk, like all those, Zaporozhye, other areas where there isn't as much wealth, and where that's Kiev there, and then way down to the south you got these other places that are much more industrial areas, and so I don't know, for whatever reason, you look at that big map of Ukraine and you see the parts that are red around the outside. We're sort of in the middle. So far, we've been relatively safe where we're working.
Could this explain why everything appears to be so quiet and
where
all
we
those
are?
live feeds?
Yeah.
So it looks like everything is coming out of the north, and how long that will take will vary.
Right.
So
right.
I mean,
right.
So what about you? Do you have plans to return back to Ukraine while this is all happening, or are you going to?
I was you guys can imagine. I mean, I was ready to get on a plane the next day as soon as this started and I wanted, and then realized the airport, there were no flights going in or anything. So I thought I could fly to Poland. And then, a couple of really good friends of mine sort of sat me down and said, Ed, think about it. Like, what are you going to do if you're there? You're going to be able to do way more here, coordinating things, helping, than you could do there. Like, I know your heart is aching. You just want to go there and do something. But they kind of talked some sense into me, and here I am. Yeah. But I'm thinking, the point may come soon where, like I said, we might start coordinating some humanitarian assistance out of Poland, let's say, and maybe that would be time to go over there and do some things. There's I'm talking like we're a big deal. We're a small organization. There are some huge organizations that are going to be getting involved and with refugees and helping people. And so we're just trying to do what we can.
And again, if anybody wants to help Ed and Loads of Love, you can go to loadsoflove.org and donate to those folks tonight and anytime through that website. And they do great work. I've been over there. I see what you guys do with, the containers of medical equipment and supplies and just everyday items that people need to survive. When you send those things overseas, those containers, you guys do a lot. So my hat certainly goes off to you.
Yeah, doing our best, man. Just really, and I think, it takes everybody, right? We all got to chip together. And this is, I said to somebody that this is the real Canadians now. This is real Canadians coming out and supporting people, who are in trouble.
Right.
And, and just plain and simple. Hey, my brother's in trouble. Like, I'm going to do something. I'm going to step up. I'm going to help him, And so I think, and nobody, I don't know. I've been around the world. I've talked to all different kind of missions agencies, charities, stuff like that. Like, very few countries give like Canada. Canadians give, and it's fantastic. That's the lifeblood of our society. We support each other. All our mothers taught us, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. We were all taught that when we were kids. A lot of people around the world, they were not taught that. They were taught survival of the fittest, like take care of yourself first. And Canadians we're a little bit different that way.
So we're seeing on the map here on
this
the
is
legend, it says
BBC, by the way.
Yeah.
Just thought worthy of mention that. Like,
yeah.
Explosions, attacks.
My house is just south of where it says Bucha there. If you see Bucha. And some of the biggest fighting right now is going on right there in Bucha. And there was a little part down below there where that looks like a river, but a blue river goes down. I got a house right there, and I'm just wondering if it's still standing. We don't have anybody in there right now, so who knows? But yeah, I look at that, and I know, just like you guys know your hometown, like I know every inch of that.
So
city.
what does it appear they're attacking? Or
yeah, it's obviously that part to the north there. That's where Chernobyl is up there. That's where there's
Chernobyl, right
there's
around here.
No, it's more. It'd be just north of the picture, actually, on the left side. Yeah, up there, and probably about 80 kilometers from the city, something like that. But there, there's nobody there really. It wasn't like, they made a big deal of them taking Chernobyl. I'm thinking like, well,
actually, we for people who didn't tune in 2 nights ago, we did have a correspondent from who's in Romania right now, who kind of gave us a Eastern European perspective on the situation, and he had pointed out the same thing, but when we Google map it, it looks like it's by a strategic road that leads out of the country.
There is a road up by Chernobyl. Okay, In fact, I take my cars there because sometimes I have to take my car across the border and back just for the license thing. And so I actually drive up there to the city that's called Chernigov, and then right over to a river, the river that runs up there, right by Chernobyl. And yeah, and in fact, I'm pretty sure that's near where they met for the meeting that they had. Was it yesterday?
Yeah, yesterday or
Yeah, it was
Sunday late.
right in that area there. But
Uh,
there's roads that go up on both sides of that, what's called the Kiev Lake, north of Kiev, and one
I got
side
it up
goes
in
up
the screen share there, Rick.
more to Chernobyl, the other side. But those are the main roads coming down from. Yeah, there you go. So those are the main roads coming down from Belarus on both sides, right? You see
Yeah.
that area right near Chernobyl, just to the right of it, that's Belarus already. And so they're like literally kilometers from Belarus. In
So
fact, when Chernobyl blew up, I mean, Belarus took most of the radiation. It wasn't Ukraine. Well, I mean, it was West Ukraine and Belarus. Yeah.
yes.
Is that area still emits radiation? And
Yeah.
Oh yes.
I had a friend who went up there with one of those counter. What's it? Is it a Geiger counter?
Geiger
Or whatever?
counter, yeah.
And he was surprised how low the radiation was. I think kind of the whole world has been surprised at, because when it first happened, we thought it was going to be like, there'd be deformed people all over the place and children, and but the effects of it seem to have been relatively, that's hard to say when so many people died. I know it was extremely bad, but there were thoughts at that time that it could be like just horrendous.
Well, you got to calculate too, right? So a lot of people have probably had cancer, which is something
Yeah.
that's long term and
Yeah.
not an immediate thing. Birth defects and
Yeah.
blah blah blah, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So, but you see, there's this bridge here, and so that could be
Yeah.
pretty strategic, and this could be an entry point into the
Yeah.
country, which is also
Yeah, because that's
strategic.
Belarus right there.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
I would wager that it probably is more strategic than people think it is.
Yeah,
And
absolutely. Yeah, yeah, because it's on that road of, like I said, and on the other side of that river, going down the other side, that's also a major, area where you would travel from Belarus to Kiev, on both sides.
yeah.
So Ed, just give me your assessment here with the size and the power of the Russian military. Like really,
Yeah,
like in my view, it's like Ukraine doesn't really stand a chance overall, right? I mean,
guys, I have to ask you to forgive me because like I said, I'm a missionary, right? But I often think about the story of David and Goliath, and David's brothers were telling him, like, you idiot, what are you thinking? Like, you can't go up there against that. And they were trying to put a big shield on him. They're trying to put, but that story is something that I'm hearing a lot from friends of mine in Ukraine. And that could be, some people would say, like, oh my goodness, like that's just a pipe dream for them. Even it's going to harm them even to think that way. But that's the way Ukrainians think. They're always the underdog. They're always the smaller neighbor. They're always the little brother, not the big brother. They've always been like the Russians have always said that Ukrainian language is not a real language. They kind of made it like it was a hillbilly language, right? So you shouldn't speak Ukrainian. You should speak Russian because Russian is a real language. And just kind of like the little brother all the time. And it really gets them, just like all of us who are little brothers like me, it gets us fired up, gets us really mad. And so I think that's probably going to give them more, I don't know, just willingness to fight. But it just doesn't seem like logical at all,
No, it doesn't. And I guess another perspective we can put on it, and we'll see how Ukrainian the Ukrainian people are when we find out there's always a difference between invasion and occupation.
Yeah.
It was easy.
Yeah.
It was easy to march the tanks into
Yeah.
Iraq,
Yeah.
but keeping them there was a whole different story. So
I've heard people say, even if they occupy and they take over, somebody said, you're going to have every babushka, the grandmother on their balcony every once in a while shooting someone or something, it's not going to be as easy. And it's, it's certainly showing that now. Yeah. I'm not, again, I don't want to be political, but because like I said, I have friends in Russia who I love dearly, very close to me. We talk a lot, and I remember one time, because they have media, they're completely controlled by the government, right? I mean, their media is you don't do anything unless you have government approval from the top of, it's
like the CBC on steroids.
Yeah. So one of my friends from Russia once, he called me when the revolution was going on in Ukraine, and he said, listen, Ed, I need to talk to you. And I'm like, oh, why? He said, I need to tell you what's really going on in Ukraine. And I was like, oh, okay. And then he began to tell me all these things that he'd been hearing on the news. And I was like, Sergey, can I just tell you that I just want you to think about this. What if I called you from Ukraine, where you are, and I said, Sergey, I want to tell you what's really going on where you are, And he called me back the next day and he said, man, I was up all night thinking that is so dumb for me to do that. To try to tell you who's there every day. And, and we were genuinely involved every day in the revolution, just taking food to people and helping people and stuff and meeting people and, the whole business. But I think sometimes all of us, we just got to really, I don't know, just try to focus on helping each other, just loving each other, man, and just, really supporting each other. And,
well, that's it. I mean, regardless of what anyone's views are on the conflict and the politics surrounding it, loads of love and your orphanage, that's something everybody can get behind,
right,
and can do something constructive, because ultimately it's the people, the average citizen, the moms, the dads, the people who go to work every day,
that's right.
These kids, they're the ones who are suffering,
they're
right?
the ones, they're the ones that are going to suffer.
And we've been hammering that point home since day one. We've been on the money with that, I think, and it's going to continue to be. Not only the Ukrainian people are going to suffer the worst, but we're going to have everybody else that's going to be suffering as well.
That's my focus, man. I'm just I just want to help people. I just want to do whatever we can right now to just help them. Things are going to go in different directions that sometimes that we don't want things to go, and all we can do, because we're sort of just doing what we can, and just sometimes it might seem real small, but could be real big, just to do a little bit.
Well, they say truth is the first casualty of war.
Yeah.
Right. So we're getting propaganda from all directions, all sides, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
But the one truth is these kids need help.
Yeah. There you go.
Well, that's the thing, right? And Ukrainian government is obligated to lie to people to tell everybody that they're winning, in a sense.
Yeah, I mean, I think every country in a war that's it becomes almost like a propaganda thing, right?
Yeah, it's like Churchill saying, "Oh, we're gonna win." It's like he had no idea he was gonna win.
That's right.
But I mean, it's a good thing that he did that. But it's nobody. If you have somebody who's running in politics and says, "Well, don't vote for me, I'm going to lose," nobody's going to vote for.
Exactly. Exactly. Well, it's like I said too, like when you go to the doctor, right? You want the doctor to tell you he knows what he's doing, he knows what to do, he knows, and people, I'd say 65% of people generally, that's what they want. They just want the government to tell them something, and they want a little bit of money too.
So what's your objective here? You said you work with about 3,000 orphans.
Yeah.
So are you trying to get them all out of the country?
No, not right now. I mean, it'd just be
Lo-
yeah,
Logistical nightmare.
yeah. And so it may sound like we're I don't know, like we're not planning very well. It may sound like that, but and really genuinely, I'm a bit guilty of that because I am day to day, and I did not expect this at all. But we're just kind of responding to the biggest need as it comes up, just because that's where we're at. And
And
so we got.
if there are shortages of food and other, you know, essentials for life every day,
Mhm.
um, are you stocked up, or do you have supplies on hand? What's the situation at the
Well,
orphanages? How long can you go?
right. They have stocked up to some extent, and the government is holding, I believe, sort of in certain areas. But it could come to a situation where they just simply need to be evacuated, and so
Yeah.
that's where we are in Kiev, for example. And so that's what we're doing right now. We're helping them to just evacuate the children as quickly as they can, as fast as they can, and these kids are probably going to go not just to the western part of the country, they're going to go right out of the country. And there's organizations already contacting me, and they're saying, like, we'll take the kids, in Poland, Hungary, in Romania. They're very experienced with helping children in those countries. So they'll be probably moved right out of the country as it goes.
So you're in contact with facilities or organizations or other orphanages in Poland where it's like, yes, you can send them here for a while
Yeah,
to keep them safe.
yeah. Like I'm not personally, I'm involved. I'm in contact with some people who do that sort of stuff at that end, and I'd just be going absolutely bananas if I had to think about everything. So there's pretty big organizations that are kind of linked with different children's aid type organizations that are really active, and they're going big guns right now to get these kids to the right place. And we just happen to be able to get funds in right now, whereas a lot of agencies can't get funds in because the banks aren't accepting dollars, and people can't go into the bank and get dollars. Anybody in Ukraine, they got a 3,000 grivna limit per day that they can withdraw from the bank. That's about $100, and they have to wait in line for 2 to 4 hours just to get that money out. So a lot of them aren't even going to get it because it's just too much of a thing, or they'll send one person to get some, and it just so getting money in, just getting it to pay for buses and gas, and you can imagine. We're able to get that money in right now with our connections and the channels that we already had set up before this started. And so we're just doing what we can to help in critical situations.
Is the fluctuation in the value of currencies an issue at all?
I'm surprised. Like again, a lot of things are surprising me big time, but I've been really surprised that the currency in Ukraine has not fluctuated a lot. The Russian ruble has just been going bananas. But the Ukrainian currency, for some reason, is it's deflated somewhat, maybe, I don't know, 10% or so, but not very much.
What does that tell you? Are the financial markets, that the world is confident that Ukraine is going to be there and emerge from this?
That's a good question. Now, I did study economics in school, and I know, the whole money supply and demand, it's all related. For some reason, people are buying local currency in Ukraine. And the thing is, in Ukraine, a lot of people have dollars stored somewhere. So they got dollars in their mattresses. They got, that's just the way that's the way they save. They don't save money in the bank. They save it in a mattress or hidden somewhere.
Now, when you say dollars, do you mean U.S. dollars?
U.S. dollars. Yeah.
Right.
They're everywhere, in every home, and everybody if they're going to hold on the currency, they hold on to dollars. And so a lot of those dollars are coming out of their mattresses right now and buying local currency so they can buy things. And I think that's what's keeping
So
the
that, and why is that? Because they can't transact to buy goods and services.
Right. You can't use the dollar to officially. It's against the law to use the dollar to make a transaction at a store. Right. You have to use the local currency.
Okay, that's interesting. Just so everybody knows, so I just checked out what Ed was saying there, and as of February 21st, Ukrainian currency was 45 cents per Canadian dollar. So every $1 Canadian you had 45 cents Ukrainian. And as of today, it is for every $1 Canadian, it's 42 cents Ukrainian. Yeah. So, I mean, it's only dropped
very little. I've been absolutely shocked, really shocked that it's stayed so stable. Even now,
it looks a lot worse on the graph I have, but I mean, if you look at the numbers, it's only like 2 cents.
They just show you the top part where it's falling. Yeah. That's an economist trick.
Yeah, that's a numbers trick across the board there.
Yeah,
but if Ukraine falls and Russia takes over, I would think the Ukrainian currency would be done.
Yeah.
No? Yeah.
I think so. I think though what a lot of British intelligence is coming out right now saying that it's very likely that what they're saying is that it's possible that what Putin wants is to split the country in half, so that half, like that side of the Dnieper River, the east side would go to Russia, and the west side would become some kind of separate country. That's kind of the sort of idea.
And then they build a new version of the Berlin Wall.
Yeah, sort of like East and West Germany, I guess.
Yeah,
the demilitarized zone in Korea, something of that nature.
And now, because I think Ukraine is. Just like we were talking about, like full occupation of the whole country is just, it's almost
it's a big job.
Yeah.
It's a big place for a big job. Now, I have to ask you this, and I don't know how much of it you can answer. If you can't answer it, then that's fine. But I wouldn't be being me if I couldn't answer it or ask you it, right? So there's a lot of talk about corruption in Ukraine. What are you able to tell us about that? Or even go ahead.
Yeah, I can say that the corruption, like throughout the former Soviet Union, everywhere when it collapsed. I was over there in the early 90s, and like it was just rampant. We did an agricultural conference, and the leaders of the country wanted me to give them each $400 in their pocket so they would speak at the conference, And I'm thinking, like, what? Like, these are the leaders of the country. If they're taking $400 in their pocket to speak, like what is the rest of the country like? And gradually I got to know that everything runs there on bribes, right? I mean, the first time I got pulled over, a car pulled over and the policeman was standing there. There was another black car pulled up because he was going too fast, and he handed him a banana through the window. The policeman took the banana and the car took off because it was a black Mercedes, right, with tinted windows. And the policeman didn't want to, get into any trouble. So he just let him go. And little by little, I realized that the entire country and Russia, Ukraine, Belarus, everywhere, like there was just, and so imagine this, an entire nation, like a massive nation, in one day changes from communism to free market. Bang, just like that. And, the what do you call them? The vultures just came out in droves, because the faster you were to grab something, the faster you were to, and very often corruptly, take control of different enterprises, organizations. The entire oil fields of Russia were taken over by men who, basically did it with power and threats, and it's almost boggles the mind that happened, and it happened so fast. And there was like little state farms, for example, and the Ukrainian government decided to give shares to everybody who worked on the farm. It's like a 30,000 acre farm, so let's give them shares. Well, then the next day, the farm boss came in and said, everybody's going to sell me their shares for $1 each. And they're like, well, I think they're worth more than that. And he just made it clear to them, if you didn't sell them to me for that, you may not have a house the next day. And so gradually, all these properties, all these businesses, everything went into the hands of powerful men many of them were very powerful even before it collapsed. And that continued on like through the whole system, and payment. I remember when I was first there, one of the policemen told me he made $200 a month. That was his salary. But he had to pay his boss $400 a month. And I was like, wait a second. That took me a while to figure out, like, wait, you make 200, you pay your boss $400. And then, well, he makes about $1,000 a month on bribes. So after he pays, he's got about $800 a month that he lives on. And the whole system, the entire system was completely, absolutely, like fully corrupt. And that has not changed as fast as some people think it has,
So it's still pretty predominant. You would say that there is plenty of officials in Ukraine who still take bribes on a regular basis.
And
without naming names or getting too deep into it, like, I don't want to get you in trouble, right? But
I would say, you don't have to look real hard at the people who are in parliament, and I can only imagine Zelensky when he came in. I'm telling you, this is just a guy who I knew, and I'd seen him, and a friend of mine was a close friend of his, and a comedian, really sharp guy, very smart. I can just imagine when he was elected, what he suddenly realized he kind of gotten himself into. I mean, I can only imagine. And I don't know everything about everything. And,
no, of course, it's all about your perspective, right? Like what you're able to perceive. And it has been said by many people I follow that if we want the true picture of what's going on over there, we need to talk to people who have been there, who have worked there, who, in your situation, have had the graces to actually live there for some time between Canada and Ukraine, and being familiar with the Ukrainian Russian mindsets. And so everything you've been able to bring to the table tonight is very insightful, and I can't appreciate that enough that you've come on our show here to talk about this. I would like to switch gears here, if Rick is okay with it, because Pierre Poilievre of the Conservative Party of Canada wants to be Prime Minister and says that he has the plan to defeat Vladimir Putin. So he has the video here. I would like to play it for everybody, and then we can kind of talk about it after. Is everybody cool with that?
I'm happy with that. Sure, as long as Ed's cool with it.
Yeah, I'm good, guys.
All right, let's play it.
We're in a global crisis. Russia has illegally invaded Ukraine after years of warning it would. And it's been shocking how weak Europe's response has been in the lead up to this tyrant's invasion of this independent country. While some countries have stepped up to the plate, major European players are sitting on the sidelines, asking Russia nicely to stop the war. There's a reason much of Europe has cowered in the face of this thug: oil and gas. The countries that have been weakest on Russia's aggression are the ones that rely on Russian energy to heat their homes, drive their cars, and power their economies. In fact, almost 40% of European Union natural gas comes from Russia. This is a problem for two reasons. One, it means Putin holds the cards when he's negotiating with Europe. He can turn off the pipes if he wants to amp up the pressure. Two, by buying Russian oil and gas, Europe is filling Putin's war chest, giving him the money he needs to build up his army and invade his neighbors. It's like walking up to the bully to give him your lunch money before he even asks for it. For example, the international community could have long ago crippled Russia's ability to do banking and fund war by cutting it off from the all-important SWIFT messaging system that connects over 11,000 financial institutions in hundreds of countries, a move that the French finance minister said would be a, quote, financial nuclear weapon. So why didn't they act long ago? Well, because European countries worried that if they cut Russia off the global banking system, Europeans would have no way of paying for Russian gas to heat their homes and power their industries. As always, petroleum is driving geopolitics. Europe has to beg Putin for energy, so Putin holds all the cards. But we can help take away those cards because Canada has what Europe needs, and lots of it: energy. We have it coast to coast, a total of 1,300 trillion cubic feet of marketable natural gas resources, according to estimates by the Canadian Energy Regulator. But as the Financial Post points out, quote, Canada currently has no natural gas export terminals on either coast, thanks in part to a regulatory environment that often delays projects for years. So we have the energy, but we can't sell it to Europe or Asia. But good news, there are multiple proposed projects to get Canada's liquefied natural gas, or LNG, to world markets like Europe and Asia. For example, there's the proposed LNG Newfoundland and Labrador, which proposes a $10 billion bill that will liquefy and ship natural gas extracted off the East Coast all the way to Europe. Newfoundland has the added benefit of being the closest point in North America to Europe, which means shorter shipping distances. If developed, it would produce some of the cleanest liquefied natural gas in the world. Local First Nations are partners in the project and will get significant paychecks for their people and self-sufficiency for their communities. So will many other Newfoundlanders and Labradorians. It would also help Europe kick its addiction to Russian gas so they could stand up to Putin rather than funding him. More money for Canadian paychecks, less money for Putin's war chest. But once again, the risk is that bureaucratic gatekeepers here at home will block it, like always. Justin Trudeau says he wants to phase out our oil and gas production, and one of his most trusted cabinet ministers was even arrested for an illegal anti-energy protest. Every time Trudeau kills a Canadian energy project, the dirty dictators like Venezuela's Maduro or Russia's Putin do a victory dance because they get to sell more of their energy when we sell less. One of Trudeau's worst laws, Bill C-69, makes it almost impossible to ever get a pipeline approved. He's vetoed the Northern Gateway Pipeline and added red tape and bureaucracy to kill the Energy East Pipeline, which would have taken Western Canadian oil to Eastern Canadian refineries. That same kind of story has been repeated again and again across the country. Not to mention the companies who don't even bother trying anymore. You want to know the worst irony? Blocking these projects hurts the environment. There are coal plants across the globe that could be shut down if Canada could provide the world with the clean natural gas it needs. So here's the plan. As Prime Minister, I will: 1. Scrap Trudeau's anti-energy laws. 2. Replace them with rules that truly protect the environment, consult First Nations, and give quick decisions on proposed energy projects. 3. Require regulators fast-track decisions on projects like LNG Newfoundland and Labrador that protect international security. Simply put, my government will remove the bureaucratic gatekeepers so our workers can get bigger paychecks and Canadian energy can power our allies against tyranny. We will take back control of our energy future, and our workers will take back control of their lives, and the world will be a greener, safer place because of it.
There we have it. So, Ed, as you are the guest of the show tonight, we will lead you to, let you do the first comments. Is this something that's going to be effective if it were to ever happen, or is it all just a pipe dream, pun intended?
Yeah, everybody likes cheap fuel and gas. You know, I mean, and markets are always driving towards where they're the cheapest. Ours are a little bit more expensive to get them going in that. But I think people are starting to think like maybe we shouldn't just always take the cheapest. We should think a little bit about where it's from. Even the environmentalists, and hey, we're all, you know, pro environment in Canada. Like Canada is a amazing environment, and we all want to keep that. But if you're going to stop a project and it's going to cause you to buy more oil from a country or from nations that are doing horrible things, like you got to kind of think a little bit about maybe we should. And I really genuinely think that Europe, I mean, they're really starting to like, whoa, what in the world were we thinking about developing more and more pipelines and stuff like that. And again, hey, all I want to say really in that regard is Ukrainians are great people. Russians are great people. You guys, I'm sure, you know, you have some friends who are Russian and Ukrainian, just great. But some of these leaders that we get, my goodness.
Yeah.
We really need to focus on getting good people who really want to do the right thing. Again, I'm not a know-it-all. I don't want to come across a know-it-all, but
so not at all.
My perspective just from living in Ukraine this long. Yeah.
We're just delivering perspectives of the individual, which is the heart of Western democracy. So
Amen.
That is what we're doing on the show here tonight.
Amen. Amen.
And in my perspective, with this particular project that is going to be the savior of the world, according to Pierre Poilievre, I mean, all respect to the guy, I will start off and say that. I think this is too little too late. And whenever we look back in history and we see a situation that is being funded by two sides, so we're funding Russia and Europe is funding Russia with all of its beautiful gas exploits because they don't care about what green energy groups say about them, and now they are trading with China, so they could turn the taps off on Europe. No problem. We'll sell it to somebody who wants it. We don't need you guys anymore. But we're funding two sides of this situation, and we have been for decades. And now look where we are. We've filled the war coffers, like Pierre Poilievre has said, and I think this is too little too late. The time to have acted on this would have been years ago. And now we have a situation that's spun out of control, and we're going to put this forward. The only reason why I like this is because it'll be good for my country, but it's not going to be good for Ukraine, and it's not going to be good for Russia. It probably won't be that great for Europe either, because they'll probably have to pay the difference of these shipping costs that happen.
Exactly.
So I'm going to go with this is a bit of a pipe dream. And we should have did this about 8 years ago if we wanted to stop all this stuff from happening. Rick Walker, what are your thoughts?
It's never too late, and it needs to be done. And we need to get focused on our energy supplies right here. I think that, honestly, the environmental movement in Canada has been corrupted. I think there's foreign money flowing into those movements so that their campaigns are designed not just to protect the environment, but really to keep our oil in the ground so that we're forced to buy foreign oil, which is sometimes blood oil. And it's less friendly to the environment. And I think it would benefit the entire world if we started to produce more of our oil and if we were able to export it, because it would be produced ethically, with the greatest degree of environmental responsibility, and it would provide affordable energy to more people all over the world, which would raise the standard of living of everyone. So I don't think it's too late ever. And it has to be done, should have been done a long time ago. You're right, but it still can be done. And we need to look ahead to the future. So we need to do that. And in addition to that, by having a strong energy sector, it also forms the foundation of a good security and foreign policy foundation. That is what has led to a lot of the instability in Ukraine, is because we're approaching this from a position of weakness, not just militarily, but economically. Europe has become vulnerable because they're dependent on Russian oil. That has enriched Russia and has given them the means to attack in the manner that they have. And if they had been getting their oil and liquefied natural gas, which can be shipped on ships safely, then from North America, then we wouldn't be in quite the position we're in right now, because Europe wouldn't be afraid of Putin turning off their energy source, and especially in the dead of winter. It's like you have to think about these things in strategically, and they were being warned for a long time. You shouldn't be buying all this oil from Russia. We need to rethink this. It's now we've got exactly what we're faced with. And just last week, Joe Biden was canceling more oil drilling contracts. Just last week, or was it 2 weeks ago?
Oh, it was not that
all
long
of this,
ago.
Yeah, it was just like he's still doing it. And then they pay lip service to this. And Justin Trudeau basically lies when he says, well, we're canceling, we're putting sanctions on Russian oil now, but we don't really buy any anyway. That's not true. Even Canada has been buying between $350 and $400 million worth of Russian oil every year. And in 2019, it hit a peak, but it's come down, but it's still buying about 350 to 400 million a year. So that again weakens Canada's position. And now, because we're doing that, because he's sanctioning the Russian oil, you know who's going to pay for that? Everybody. We're going to pay for it at the pumps. The people, even in Europe, will pay a higher price, because it's going to screw with the whole market, right? And oil is a global commodity. And the U.S. dollar is actually tied to the value of oil. When they came off the gold standard, the U.S. dollar, Nixon made sure that it was tied to the price of oil, because he made a deal with the Saudis. And that's one of the things that props up the U.S. dollar. That's a big part of this whole equation that people are not aware of. It's Russia is a big player in oil. And if the United States loses its position, and Western countries lose their positions on oil, and Russia takes a bigger foothold in that, it hurts the American dollar, which is the world's reserve currency. There's all these things coming into play. And honestly, the Biden administration's foreign policy, their economic policies, their energy policies, because they're so woke, so far left wing, and so corrupted, honestly, by foreign money pouring in, as I say, even through these environmental groups, to influence people to turn off the spigots in North America and stop drilling and don't produce energy at home. It makes us dependent on everything else, on energy coming from other parts of the world. So now, even today, the United States and Canada, they're negotiating with Iran to get more oil, and they're begging Saudi Arabia to open up the spigot more and put more oil into the market. And they're saying, no, we're not going to do it, because they're enjoying higher prices. They're making more and more money. They're profiting from all of this. And that's blood money in itself. So don't get me started, Brendan.
Hey. Rick's rants are the foundation for this show. This is why everybody's coming back. If you could pull up the image I have, I think there's one point that we've all missed out on. This is Ukraine's oil pipeline corridor.
That's Russia's,
Well, here's the thing. Ukraine profits hugely off of this, and this is
Yeah.
the story of Nord Stream. The Nord
Yeah.
Stream pipelines is the Nord Stream pipelines go around it, and they
Yeah.
no longer have to pay
Yeah.
millions and millions of dollars to Ukraine in
That's
order
right.
to do that. So Ukraine is also double dipping in the situation to some degree, if you think about it. They don't want Russia to build the Nord Stream pipeline and fuel Europe that way too, right? So
Yeah.
this is a mess. We built such a mess here, and it makes me sick that all these people, the common people, the children that you have worked closely with, the people that you know there, your relatives, these common people are going to pay for this big mess that they've made. This is terrible, and I think bad energy policies and green energy policies is right in the midst of all of this.
Yeah, they definitely don't think very much. You know, when governments sit down and they're going to please this person or please that group, or, you know, they want to be seen that they're helping the environment, they're not thinking a lot, okay, if we don't produce it ourselves, where are we going to get it from? And what's that going to do when our money goes over there big time? You know, what's it going to support, you know? And I think obviously hopefully it's going to be a little bit more thought now into things like that. But, you know, this has happened before and doesn't seem to have affected the thought all that much. And I just want to say, you know, back to the kind of like my Ukraine theme or whatever, you know, you guys, I'm starting to think you guys are both a little Ukrainian, because Ukrainians they just say exactly what they think. They don't think at all about, you know, what political agenda or whatever, or political correctness. And really, it's very refreshing when people just, and thank God, still in Canada, we can do this, you know, just speak our minds and be open and honest with each other, and just what I've seen, what you've seen, you know, like, let's talk about this. I'm thinking a lot about Canada lately since I've been back, and like, where's the open, honest conversations about both sides of the story? You know what I mean? So many people are there either on one side or the other side, and then they don't even want to talk to each other. Like,
my team is better than your team, and your team sucks, and
right.
your team is a bunch of Nazis,
Right.
and are not allowed to talk about a darn
Right.
thing, and you could go to hell.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I just, you know, I really encourage you guys, man. I'm just happy. You know, I've been having I was gonna use a bad word again, just having a bad few days, and I've just been really encouraged tonight just to be open and honest and talk, and it's good. You know, that's good. That's glad we have that freedom, you know, just to do that, and that we got to hang on to that ability just to be open and not be controlled by what someone else is trying to feed us to think a certain way, and have great conversations, like great debates about topics that really matter. And that's fun. I love that. And that's what Canada, you know, the Canada I remember growing up, that's what we were always like, right?
Free speech, sharing of ideas, you know, and debating them in a civil way, right?
Yeah. And you know, I say the Ukrainian people are amazing people, and really the Russian people are amazing people. And if it gets right down to that, you know, I'd love to have a good Russian and a good Ukrainian in a room and just start really sharing ideas and being real open about what's going on, and just that kind of good debate. I think, you know, I have a good friend in Siberia, and I've really been thinking lately, I want to get me and him together, you know, do a video or something. Just, you know, here's a guy who's working in Ukraine, here's a guy who's from Russia, right? Just to talk together openly about, you know.
Well,
really,
our platform is open to you. If you ever wanted to do that, we would very gladly host such a discussion.
I think that'd be interesting. Yeah.
I think so too. I'm all for that, because at the end of the day, a lot of these extreme leftists who are the ones who are censoring people,
Yeah.
are the ones who are fueling both sides of this whole mess,
Yeah.
and that sort of thing. 9 times out of 10, if you talk to them directly, they're going to talk in a more of a calm, relevant manner than flip out like we've seen. Although I don't know, I know Rick has lots of friends who aren't like that, but neither here nor there. It's a story for another day. But in my experience, I'm able to have pretty diplomatic conversations with people and to point out, like, hey, we need to have our own energy here, because if we don't, we're going to buy it from real bad guys.
Yeah.
That is bad.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah. So with all of that, I guess we can probably wrap up the conversation with you. But maybe again, Ed, you can tell people how they can help, how they can donate and make a difference.
Yeah, you got the site there, just loadsoflove.org. If anybody can help, and we are not a massive organization, changing the world, but we're doing what we can. And so every little bit that anybody can help with, it makes a big difference for us and helps us help, real genuine kids that are in a tough situation right now.
Yeah, and you'll make sure the money gets there.
Yeah, like I said, I'm so proud that our organization, 100% of the money that is donated goes right. Yeah, like I worked for the Canadian government for a while, and the percentage was quite a bit lower. What actually got to the people that it was targeted at, and so we're able to do that. That's been one of my main focuses from the start. And for now, I can't make any promises, but for now, we're getting funds into the right hands, into good hands, to really genuinely make a difference. I don't know what tomorrow's going to bring, but if it brings something different, we'll shift, and we'll still be focused on helping people there. Yeah.
And I am familiar with Loads of Love, quite familiar with it, and I've been over there, many times, and I've been in the thrift store, and I can confirm that it's an extremely efficient operation.
Yeah.
And great people. Honestly, it's one of the best charities that I've ever come across.
Thank you, Rick.
It absolutely is.
I think the great part is that everybody that's with us is a volunteer. Like
exactly.
And I think that changes you a little bit when you're given not just your time, you're giving your heart a little bit to the
Yeah, there are lots of organizations out there that say they're charities, but they have huge administrative costs and people drawing paychecks and blah blah blah, right? But that's not really the case with Loads of Love.
Yeah.
You give to Loads of Love, and it's going to the people who need the help. Yeah. It's just that simple.
Thank you, Rick.
Yeah. So if you donate to them, you can rest assured that it will find its way to the people who really need it. I can absolutely vouch for that.
Yeah.
So with that, thank you very much, Ed, for joining us. If you want to come back on anytime, you are always welcome here.
Thank you very much, Rick. Really appreciate it. It was fun. I just love it, being open and sharing ideas. That's Canada,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, my friend, keep up the good work. We'll be in touch, and we'll get an update from you at some point.
Good. Thank you. Okay. Thank you very much.
All right. Take care. Bye for now. Now we have lots of other ground to cover tonight. Brendan will be back momentarily. The Pfizer documents, the first block of documents that were court ordered to be released have been released now. And we are going to take a look at that in a moment. I've not had time to digest very much of it. I've been trying to just sort of read out of the corner of my eye a little bit of it. I do have some documents to share with you in a moment, outlining some of the adverse reactions that are laid right out in the Pfizer documents, so we can go over some of that. What I'm seeing is there are some media reports out there identifying some numbers and some stats on adverse reactions, and possibly they're even saying deaths, where the mainstream media is already kicking into high gear, trying to paint these assessments as being misinformation. So at this point, I really don't know, because I have not had time to read the documents myself. A lot of pages to read, and I'm going to try to skim through some of this stuff and find something in here worthwhile to share with you. What you're seeing here is, of course, these live feeds out of Ukraine tonight. It was very nice of Ed to come on and share his information with us. And of course, you can go to loadsoflove.org to support his organization. They're doing great work with orphans over there in Ukraine, and it's got to be very traumatic for those kids.
Yes, it's the regular people that are going to suffer through this conflict, just like it has through every other conflict that has ever been. And we're going to be looking at a massive crisis here in regards to immigration and the whole 9 yards. It's so much of this remains to be seen, and it really does look like the Russian push forward is very slow at this point. We're at day 6, and everybody else's guess is as good as mine as to what the final outcome is going to be with this.
Well, I think that the media is reading it wrong, Brendan. I think.
Oh, that's a shocker.
I just think Putin has all the cards on his side. He has the power, and I think that the media is looking at it and they're trying to spin it because they're cheerleading, and they are basically pro-war.
They are cheerleading it.
I think it's disgusting.
That's the weirdest thing about this whole thing, is how pro-war they are, and how pro-war all of the leftists are in this. Like, you go back to Iraq war, and it was the exact opposite of what we're seeing in this situation entirely, where the Republicans were all gung-ho to go to war, and the Democrats were saying, no, we can't go to war. But now it's the Republicans and it's the Republicans and everybody else who's looking at this and say, like, we should not get involved in this. We need to be careful with what we do. And even more liberal-minded Canadians are running off over there to Ukraine, dropping all of their lives, dropping their children, their jobs, their spouses, to run off to Ukraine to quite probably end up dead, or going to create an international incident that was cheerleaded by the mainstream media and by our government to some degree.
Look, man, here's what I think the truth is. Ukraine is a corrupt country, has been for a long time. And what you have is a bunch of rich people, a bunch of billionaires, many of them politicians, leaders from countries, Western countries, who have been using that country as a money laundering mart, like a money laundromat. And I think some of them are afraid, some of them are scared, and there's a whole lot of corruption, not just in Ukraine itself, but as I say, I think there are a lot of people with a whole lot of money and a whole lot of power who have been using that country and abusing it in very corrupt ways to filter their cash. And they don't want this information coming out, and they don't want the money train to stop. And I think that's a big part of why we're seeing what we're seeing. And those same people, because they control governments, also control the media. And so we're getting a whole lot of cheerleading going on. And it's the regular people who are paying the price. So we've got a bunch of corruption on one side, and we've got a dictator on the other. And there are no good guys in this. It's just really bad news all the way around. And because of all this bad dealing on both sides and all this power broking and posturing, these people, these elite snobs, are taking us to the brink of nuclear war. And it is mind-boggling and scary as all you know what. That's, I think, probably pretty closer to the truth than anyone is comfortable to admit. And because most people just sit at home and watch TV, or even just soak up what they see on the internet, you're getting some divisions, but because there is information out there and there is information available, some people are awake. And I'm sorry, but the same people that have kept us locked down, same people who have been lying to us for years, are the same people now who are encouraging us to go to war. Well, I personally think that anybody that is stupid enough to go over there and pick up a gun and think that they're going to make some big difference in a conflict that is a foregone conclusion, I think it's pretty much a lost cause over there. People here might not want to hear that because they're soaking up what the media is feeding them. But Russia is, I don't know if it's the number 2 or the number 1 military power in the world. They might even be the most powerful. They may be even more powerful than the United States, because right now the U.S. is led by a feeble old man who is basically incompetent and slightly senile, who couldn't even get out of Afghanistan in a way that preserved even a minimum of American respect, self-respect. It looked to me like it was almost intentional, the way that it was done, so that they could just hand over all the weaponry to their enemies, their enemy in Afghanistan. It was just ridiculous. I mean, I don't know how anyone could be that incompetent. If you can't even handle that, how are you going to handle this?
Yeah.
And the reality is he's not. And we're going to hear more from him in about 45 minutes in the State of the Union address, Joe Biden. And I'm afraid of what I'm going to hear.
Well, I've said it in this broadcast today. I thought about it last night, and it bears worth repeating. I am more horrified that Justin Trudeau and Joe Biden are driving this ship than I am about Vladimir Putin. And that says something here. That really does say something, that their incompetence has the possibility to do way more damage than any damage Putin could do. And that's the stark truth. You're right on the money there, that what happened in Afghanistan, military withdrawals have been a standard procedure since before the Civil War in the United States in the 1860s. They know how to retreat. They know how to do it well. They know how to withdraw. And the standard practices of that involve ensuring that no supplies fall into enemy hands. They know how this works. And those same military officials who were involved in the Afghanistan debacle are the same people who want to go to war with this. It's not looking good at all for anybody.
And some of these military experts have been actually talking about the possibility of a limited nuclear conflict. It's incredibly irresponsible. And Helen Dean says Putin is not scary, he is crazy. I disagree. I'll tell you why, Helen. And I mean this in the most respectful way. Putin is shrewd. He is smart. He's powerful. He's not crazy. You're hearing that he's crazy in the media because anytime there's a war, anytime there's a conflict like this, the propaganda machine kicks into high gear. And you think back, any conflict they always portray the adversary, the guy on the other side, the guy that they depict as their enemy, as crazy. Every single time. He's always insane. He has to be stopped. I don't think he's crazy. I think he just has motives that a lot of people here don't understand, because there's history that goes back hundreds and even thousands of years that he is approaching this from. And there's a lot of politics, there's religion, there's strategy, there's the whole NATO thing, right? With moving into Ukraine and being a threat to Russia. He's not crazy. He might have a heart as cold as steel, but rest assured, he's doing what he thinks is right. He's doing what he thinks he needs to do to protect and preserve the sovereignty of Russia and keep the threat of the Western countries, NATO, at bay. And on the other side, there's a whole different perspective. And as I say, you've got, and I'm not defending Putin. He's a dictator. That's the reality of it. You heard Ed talk about the censorship in Russia. It's absolutely true. So I'm no big Putin fan, that's for sure. But I'm also not a fan of what I've been seeing going on the other side. Mismanaged, too much corruption, too many rich people, fat cat politicians and bureaucrats over there lining their pockets. And now we're all paying the price because they haven't had the best interests of their countries or the people around the world in mind or at heart. It's all been self-interest over there for far too long. And who's suffering? Who's suffering the most? Those orphans. You're going to suffer too, because we're going to be paying $2 a liter for gasoline real soon. And more for groceries and more for everything else. All for what? For what? This is so disgusting.
Surreal.
It is.
And to your point there, it's very funny, the state of Joe Biden's mind. And the media goes around and says Putin is deranged due to severe isolation since COVID. Which is like, what?
Sir, I didn't get that, Brendan. Say it again.
The mainstream media is analyzing that Putin's brain is scrambled due to too much isolation due to COVID, and meanwhile, Joe Biden probably couldn't pass a cognitive ability test.
I did hear a report, as I have a lot of stuff playing through the day, right? Just being bombarded with information. There was a report where they were talking about how Putin is terrified of COVID. Because he's 70 years old and he's concerned about his health. And then it turned into the whole he's crazy thing. It's like, what the hell are you talking about? It's nuts. And you know, the other thing I've noticed, Brendan, is the commentators on television and the editorialists. It's sort of strange. The political lines are sort of being blurred here a little bit. It's like, even on Fox, I've noticed, like, Sean Hannity is a cheerleader for war, right? He's like, Putin's a nut bar, and he's really dangerous, and we have to do everything we can to fight him, right? And on the other side, you've got Tucker Carlson, who's anti-war. And it's just I haven't listened to a lot to Dan Bongino, but with the little bits that I have seen and heard, he seems to be sort of on the pro-war side too. It's things are really surprising me, and where some of these people are landing.
Well, Tucker is not surprising by a long shot, and he has talked about this in the past year, and he has said I'm not right all the time. I am wrong, and I've learned my lessons from Iraq. And so he was a cheerleader for Iraq, and he is going back on that now and saying, I was wrong to do that. The conflict in Iraq was bad. It should have never have happened. And so I respect that a hell of a lot more than I respect what I see a lot of these other journalists doing. But that's why you're seeing Tucker Carlson say all this stuff.
Yeah, well, I'm pretty much on his page on this one. From what I've seen him say, I'm pretty much right there.
Yeah.
This whole thing from the beginning has been, it just stinks of propaganda. The whole thing, it really does. And yeah, I think it's been handled very irresponsibly. Even Lindsey Graham, was it Lindsey Graham who said, might have been him. I could be wrong. I might be picking the wrong guy, but somebody said that they thought that Putin would be willing and it was thinking of nuking a city to demoralize the Ukrainians and bring a quicker resolution to the conflict, which is a completely irresponsible thing to say. I'm pretty sure it was Leslie Graham. Because as soon as you say something like that, it's like you're calling for a first strike on your side to prevent that. It's like you start using that kind of language when you're in a position of authority like that, and you're in power, man, like those words escalate things real quick. And in a situation like this, you have to watch every syllable you say and make sure that you say just the right thing, because one wrong thing, one wrong move, and things can get out of hand right quick. And the next thing you know, we're all freaking vaporized.
That's why I think Ukraine as a government has been really irresponsible with how they've handled some things that maybe they should have just not said anything about, but they're very public about just about everything they're doing, and that's a no-no in wartime. You don't do that. There's a reason why those things are kept secret, is because you don't, like, Putin's watching all of this. He can see all this. It's not a problem for him, but they go ahead and announce, oh, we have armed over 10,000 civilians with automatic rifles. That's not a good thing. That's like playing poker with your cards reversed and everyone can see your hand, right? Like that's absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah, I
and irresponsible.
Yeah. The whole thing has been handled in an irresponsible manner. I don't think we ever needed to get to this point, ever.
No.
If Biden's foreign policy had been in order, if they were a little bit smarter, we never would have been led down this path to begin with, because they would have been able to hold Putin at bay, and a little more diplomacy on both sides would have gone a long way. I don't think that we need to be in conflict with Russia at all. I see lots of ways that the West could be getting along with Russia and working with Russia, so that to everyone's benefit. Instead, what happened is Russia has been pushed away, feels threatened, and now they're more closely aligned with China than ever before. And
who could blame them?
And they become allies. So now you have the other two big military powers in the world and economic powers, especially China, aligned against the West, the United States. It's really bad. And China can take advantage of this in a lot of different ways. So
you know what? We should be super careful that any second now they're going to hit Taiwan, I bet. It's like this, if you're looking at it from a strategic way, the West is weak. I seen it best in a meme. It had China, Russia, and Iran, and they were like these really scary wolves. And it basically was pointing out like all these countries are predators to us, which they are.
Yes.
And so if China is calculating, and I'm sure they are, they're probably waiting for Putin to do something slightly more aggressive than what he's already doing. And that's going to be time to hit. Like, I'm not a military strategist here, but I could see this a mile away, and I'm not the first person to mention this either. Like, you're gonna want to hit while Joe Biden is down, and he's always down.
Yeah. Well, and Biden and the whole Biden family, they're up to their eyeballs in the corruption in Ukraine.
Yeah,
We've seen it. It's documented. And the media, they're up to their eyeballs because they've helped him cover it up. So really what you have in the White House is a corrupt old man. That's
senile old man, like
senile and corrupt as hell.
Yeah. And Carla, who's a nurse, she's one of our freedom reporters. She has commented explicitly on this, that she's seen conditions of that nature, and she's well aware of what a lot of these targets are in mental health. And she says Joe Biden is not, he's not playing with the full deck of cards. The lights are on and nobody's home. And the surprising thing, Rick Walker, on Sunday night, I was listening to CBC Radio. Or I guess you should say I was spying on CBC Radio. And on their hourly news segment, they said President Joe Biden has kept a low profile all weekend. So I laughed really hard at that, because they're starting to turn on old Joe. They know what he's about. And that may seem like a small thing to say, but it's actually a really big thing to say. That Joe Biden, whenever there's a problem, is going to go and hide down in his basement every time.
Well, Tony Chalk says, Rick, so is Justin, and he's referring to what I said about the Biden family being up to their eyeballs in corruption. And I'll tell you this, I would like to see some
documentation of that.
Well, not just that, but I'd like to see maybe an investigation of some kind to see what kind of linkages there might be between Canadian politicians and bureaucrats and Ukraine and some of the corruption that's been going on over there. Just let's see who's clean.
I would put Chrystia Freeland, the deputy prime minister, at the top of that list.
As someone you'd like to take a closer look at, you mean?
Yeah, I would say
we don't want to accuse anybody of anything.
I'm not accusing anybody. I'm saying if I were to suspect anybody, I would say she would need to be investigated first. I would say if there's anything that smells in this situation, it's Chrystia Freeland and her direct connection to the Ukraine, whether it be through her heritage or growing up and where she did student exchange programs in the USSR. She has a direct connection to all this, and something smells.
Yeah, Irina C. says, Rick, he would never resort to military measures against any country unless sorely provoked. They were ready to respond to any provocation, but the last thing Putin wants is another war. Yeah, I don't think Putin even, honestly, I don't think he really wanted to go in there. I don't think he needed it. I don't think he wanted the grief. I think he would have preferred to not push any conflict with NATO and the Western countries. But for his own reasons, I think he did feel provoked. And that, again, is a failure of Biden's foreign policy. So
she does make a really good point here. She does make a really good point here, Rick. But I would say we would need to be careful about what Vladimir Putin calls a provocation. He could classify Canada sending anti-tank weapons and all these other weapons that we're sending over there. He could call that a provocation of war.
They have been provoking him if you really look at it. Even during the whole Syria conflict, there were no-fly zones. The U.S. kept going in. Syria doesn't belong to the United States. Russia was the one that was really propping up the government there, and they had their had a foothold in Syria, and it was the United States and the Western countries and NATO that was trying to destabilize everything in Syria. And then while all that was going on, even back in like 2016, they kept moving more and more missiles up closer and closer to the Russian border. And, you know, if that's not provocation, I don't know what is. They've been wanting a conflict with Russia for many, many years, especially over the last 8 or 9.
Well,
And
since
it's been
1945. Since 1945, they've wanted a conflict with Russia. And even General Patton in World War II, old blood and guts, and his dual pistols there, he wanted the United States, and he wanted Churchill and all the Western powers. He wanted them to start pushing the Russians back out of Germany.
Mm-hmm.
So this is a day one problem. Like this has not gone away.
So we are going to switch gears here in just a moment, and we're going to talk about the release of these Pfizer documents, because I think it's a big story. But I will just remind everyone that if you want to support our journalism, you can go to freedomreporters.com. That's freedomreporters.com, or you can click the link in the description on the YouTube channels and on the Facebook platforms, and go directly to the donation page. We're fighting this information war. We're trying to bring you as much truth through our interviews and even in the field reporting as we can, to act as a counterbalance against the government-funded, state-controlled mainstream media, legacy media, which today largely accounts for, really engages in propaganda. And now more than ever, I think we need independent voices. After 25 plus years at CTV, over 30 years in the media in general, I can tell you that journalism as we knew it is dead. And I personally, even though I used to work in the mainstream media, I don't trust any of it anymore. Not any of it. None. And that's why I'm back. And that's why I'm working with Brendan and others. That's why we're here. We're fighting this information war. And to do it, we need your help, because there are costs associated with keeping these broadcasts going.
Yes.
And I hope that we can make a difference.
And I think we are day by day. And, you know, between Rick and his over 20 years experience, well, it's probably 30 years experience collectively in the journalism industry, and I have over a decade in corporate communications. So between the two of us, we have a fairly balanced mindset when it comes to what the best interest of average people are and what they should be looking at. So between the two of us, I think we are making a big difference. Once again, please feel free to donate at freedomreporters.com. And if you're unable to help us out financially, please remember to like and subscribe and hit the bell for notifications. It all helps us out. Thank you so much for all your help, everybody.
So here's the documents from Pfizer.
How many pages is it?
Like, I don't know, 10,000 or something.
Holy gee.
Anyway, my dog is missing me, as you can see. Apparently, it's pages 30 to 38 that outline a lot of these side effects. So let me just, I have these separated here. So let me call this up. Page 30 to 38.
Now, Rick, are these the documents that they said that they would not be able to release for like a decade, and then the judge made them?
I think it was like 75 years or something like that. It was more than a decade, if I remember right.
Yes. So is that are these the documents then?
Yes. So this is an appendix, a list of adverse events of special interest. And it's just a long list of different, I guess, injuries and side effects from that they observed. I believe they had something like 19,000 test subjects when they were doing the first rounds of doing these rounds of testing, I guess. And again, folks, like, I've not had time to really digest this, so don't take this for, absolute truth at all. I'm like you, this is the first time I'm really looking at it. I know that there are a number of media reports out there offering up some numbers on people who died during the trials, and numbers on deaths, not just deaths, but all kinds of different side effects as well. But I don't know how accurate those numbers are. And the mainstream media, like I say, they're ramping up this media campaign already that I've seen where they're trying to discredit that. Right here, we're seeing what kinds of things: acute disseminated encephalomyelitis, acute dermatosis, acute flaccid myelitis. I'm not a doctor. Acute hemorrhagic leukoencephalitis, acute hemorrhagic edema of infancy, acute kidney injury, acute macular outer retinopathy, acute motor axonal neuropathy, acute motor sensory axonal neuropathy, acute myocardial infarction.
Infarction, yeah.
Acute respiratory distress syndrome, acute respiratory failure, Addison's disease, administration site thrombosis, administration site vasculitis, adrenal thrombosis, adverse event following immunization, aguesia, a bunch of stuff. I don't even know what it is because, again, I'm not a doctor. Allergic bronchopulmonary mycosis, allergic edema, alloimmune hepatitis, alopecia areata, Alpers disease, alveolar proteinosis, ammonia abnormal, ammonia increased, ammonia cavity infection. What else? Obviously, some respiratory issues. We're looking at antiplatelet antibody positive.
This is very concerning. That,
I mean, these are all things. Now, there's no quantitative data here. No, all I'm seeing is a list on these pages. But these are all things that did present during the trials.
amongst 19,000 individuals.
Yes. Chronic inflammatory demyelinating polyerratic, I don't even pronounce that. The list is, this is a long list of things. Now, you know what concerns, like right off the bat, do you remember when this came out? Do you remember what they told us when the vaccines were first introduced? They said,
oh, yeah,
they're perfectly safe. There's nothing to worry about. I literally heard doctors say that there are like no side effects. That there would be no side effects. It was going to be 95 to 97% effective with the first shot. And the second one was going to be just to make sure. And there were going to be that there were no side effects, and that the studies that they'd done showed that it was completely, totally safe. That's what they were telling us when they first started to roll these things out.
I got a video clip from MSNBC of Joe Biden saying those things. If you want to play it,
I would love to play that just to reinforce that point. Thank you, Brendan.
You're
Let's
welcome,
do
sire.
just that.
All right.
We all know there's some history, there's some hesitancy about taking this vaccine. We all know there's history in this country of having subjected certain communities to terrible medical abuses in the past. But if there's one message to cut through to everyone in this country, it's this: the vaccines are safe. Please, for yourself, your family, your community, this country, take the vaccine when it's your turn and available. That's how to beat this pandemic. We're making progress. We deployed more vaccinators, the people to put the vaccine in your arm. We're now making it possible for retired doctors and nurses to come back and under law administer these shots. We've put new vaccinators in the field. These include over 800 medical personnel from our commissioned corps at the Department of Health and Human Services, and personnel from the Federal Emergency Management Agency, FEMA, Defense Department, National Guard. We're literally lining up thousands of vaccinators, because it's one thing to have the vaccine, it's very different to get it in someone's arms. We're also creating more places for people to get vaccinated. We provided $3 billion to states, territories, and tribes to create hundreds of new vaccination centers to ramp up the existing
Have
ones
you heard enough?
that now
Yeah.
there. Right.
Absolutely. They were supposed to be perfectly safe, right? 95 to 97% effective. If he also said, and we can find the clip if we need to, it's a fact. He said, if you get vaccinated, you won't get COVID.
Is that what when he did it all creepy? He like went in and he was like, if you get vaccinated, you're not going to get COVID. Is that it's like he did it like in that creepy ass Biden voice thing he does?
He did it in every voice possible because I'm sure he's said it more than once.
Yeah.
That was the message. These documents, well, I don't know, right?
Well, after the show here, Rick, now that the stuff is out, I think I might have a contact that might be able to help bring us more info on this, but I think we may want to do that show on a different platform, quite possibly.
Yeah. I mean, now see, on the flip side of that, here's MSN. And they're now already, like the mainstream media, they're kicking into high gear, and they're saying that this is all misinformation. Online articles shared on social media claim a document released by the U.S. Food and Drug Administration revealed more than 1,200 deaths related to Pfizer-BioNTech's COVID-19 vaccine in a 90-day period. But the pharmaceutical giant says the document does not indicate the fatalities are linked to vaccination, and it concludes the shots are safe, a finding supported by U.S. health authorities as well as clinical research. And then they got a big X through this thing, and so here we go, right? It's like over here we've got this information, and over here you've got the mainstream media kicking into the cheerleading mode, and who the hell knows what the truth is. So I'm not making any claims here. All I've done here tonight is read some of the information from the documents themselves. That's absolutely a fact. That's the real document from Pfizer. That's what's listed, some of what is listed on those 8 pages for adverse effects. And this, I'm just telling you that there are all these reports out there tonight saying that there were as many as 1,200 deaths related to the Pfizer injections in a sample size of about 19,000 people. But on the flip side of that, we're getting pushback from the other media saying that's not really an accurate claim. So what I would encourage people to do is go out.
Disclaimer here is Brendan Kennedy and Rick Walker are not medical professionals. Please consult your doctor for information on that. So we are not giving medical advice, and we are what you do in your own home is up to you.
I don't even know if, well, I don't know if I would recommend, well, whatever. I think that people need to go out, get some good information, educate yourself, and go to credible sources, good sources, good sources. Educate yourself. We'll dig into this in other ways in a future episode of the Freedom Reporters here on the Maverick News Network. But all of this information, very, very, it's where we need to look at this. I'll put it to you that way.
It needs a full spotlight on it. I think that there's all kinds of things that are being done in the shadows here. We've all seen the advertising of all the news networks saying, CNN this morning, brought to you by Pfizer. We've all seen that. We all know. We all know how much Pfizer funds. And we all know how many people who sit on different media boards also sit on the board for Pfizer and different corporations.
Yeah.
This is the weirdest thing about this is how guilty pharmaceutical companies have been in the past. And all you have to do is look at Oxycontin and amphetamines to know what I'm talking about, is how guilty they've been in the past of causing immeasurable harm to our society. But meanwhile, we've given them a full pass. I just want to go back to normal. And that's what they say, oh, well, if you take this, it'll go back to normal. But you know what, folks? They lied about this, and they'll continue lying. I can't believe a darn word any of them say anymore.
Yeah, well, mainstream media, right?
Or the politicians. Like, who the hell do you believe?
I don't know, but I know for sure we're going to be hearing a lot more about this release of the release of these documents in the days ahead.
They're going to ignore it as much as they can, and in this situation, as you see, they're going to spin it. And we have seen, Rick, you can speak more about this than I can, but did they not release a swine flu vaccination in the 90s or 80s? And it killed a couple of people, and people went bananas, and the press went bananas.
Well, it was more than a couple of people. It was, it was.
Before my time, sorry.
Yeah, I mean, it was
Lay
far. I don't remember the exact stats because you're catching me, right? But yeah, there were people who suffered because of that, and then they shut it down. So that's what happened with that. They eventually shut that down, and they wanted to vaccinate everybody with that as well. So this here, man, like they've already rolled this out. Massive numbers of people have been given this injection. So it better be safe. And I'm praying that everybody's okay. Because I'm not making any claims here.
No.
But okay.
I'm praying too. Like we have been through so much trauma together, and nobody knows how we're going to get out of this, but you and I both know, Rick Walker, that the first step in moving forward is talking about it and bringing awareness to people about these issues that we've suspected, and this list reinforces what we've been thinking about this whole situation. And it's also indicative that you people at home also talk about these things. And you test your knowledge of these items. You think about them. You think critically about them. These are important things that we all have to acknowledge. And, maybe there's people that, you haven't gotten along with. Like, this has been the biggest divider in my lifetime, and possibly even Rick Walker. I'm not sure, but it's indicative that you talk to people about this, even if they don't like it. It's
Yeah,
like
and I have to point out that here on page 29,
Yep.
summary and conclusion, it says, review of the available data for this cumulative PM experience confirms a favorable benefit risk balance for BNT 162B2. So that's their conclusion. But here's on the other side of that, what you're seeing here, these are adverse reactions. And that's not no reactions. That's reactions. Those are
many
side effects. Many.
And
Now, you pick up any drug, though, and like even heart medication or whatever, blood pressure medication, and you read the side effects and some of the stuff, you'd go, well, I'd never take that because it'd probably kill me. But, sometimes, it is a cost-benefit analysis, right? So, again, I don't know because I haven't had time to read all of this, but I encourage everybody, we're going to get a website up. We don't have our Maverick News website up yet, but when we will get it up very soon, and we will post these documents for anybody that wants to see them. Because this is information everybody should have access to, because I believe that people should not have to rely on us or the mainstream media or any single source of information or even the government or even just your health unit. We should have access to all information so that people can draw their own conclusions and educate themselves and be fully informed, especially when making a healthcare decision for themselves and their families.
I concur. And, well, I know you have another broadcast to start up, and unfortunately,
Yes, sir.
folks, I cannot be there. It is Freedom Night in Ontario, so I am no longer a second-class citizen and am able to enjoy a pint in a real restaurant, like a real person. So I'm going to do that. And I guess before we go, folks, although this is a small victory in the scheme of things, just remember the mandates are still there. They can be called upon at any time. This is not a major victory. This is small footings. And believe you me, it would not surprise myself at all if they bring all these mandates back at the drop of a hat. So there's still more of an information war that needs to be fought. There's still more things that we need to do. We have a lot of work ahead of ourselves. And for the meantime, you can go to freedomreporters.com, or you can click the link in the description down below. And if you are able to support us, I greatly appreciate that. And in the meantime, if you are unable to support us financially, you can give this video a like and hit the subscribe button and the bell for notifications. That is also of a great help. Many more things to come in the days ahead. I love you all, and thank you so much for having me. This is Brendan Kennedy with Maverick News. Have a good night, everybody.
It's been a slice, Brendan, and we will be signing off here briefly. I will be back in 6 minutes at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time with the State of the Union address, starring the one, the only, President Joe Biden. And I'll have my own personal analysis and commentary on it, and we'll share people's comments as well. And we can all have an open discussion amongst ourselves because Brendan is going out to partay like a real person.
Real person.
A real human.
You're a real boy, Pinocchio.
And with that, we will sign off, and I will catch everybody on the flip side. Pick up the next broadcast. Same station, different bat time this time, 9 p.m. 5 minutes now, 5 minutes, and I'll pick everybody up over on the other channel. Well, it's the same channel, just a new broadcast. We're gonna bring this one to an end, and you get the idea. So
They
we're
know what you
signing
mean.
off. You got it. We'll be back. We'll
All right.
catch you all over there.
Thanks, everybody, and enjoy.
Thanks, Brendan. And we are out.